Chapter 689. In Yangcheng, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were both quite shy. After Kiki woke up from her afternoon nap, the two of them were too embarrassed to be together. In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit didn't really want to go out, so he took the information that Wang Di gave him and continued to prepare the secret manual for Fong Beibei. Although there was still a long time before Fong Beibei and the others left for the competition, Poplar Fruit didn't have much time left. After he finished summarizing the secret manual, he still had to teach Wang Di and Shen Hong how to write a thesis. Kiki kept saying that she wanted to go out to play, so Poplar Fruit found her 2 episodes of cartoons to appease her. Time flew by. If it wasn't for Song Jiwen's call, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have noticed that it was almost 5 o'clock. "Old Gua, are you coming back to play basketball?" Song Jiwen asked casually over the phone. "Why don't you bring your girlfriend over to meet us?" "What basketball? Do you have a competition with Uncle Dao and Uncle Jean?" Poplar Fruit asked excitedly. In the past few months, Poplar Fruit had been too busy. Other than going out to practice martial arts in the morning, he didn't participate in any other sports activities. Song Jiwen often complained that without Poplar Fruit's thigh, he was often abused when he played basketball. "Let's not play basketball. Let's play badminton." Song Jiwen laughed. "Coincidentally, I have little Chili on my side, and you have 2 people on your side. Let's play doubles." When they were in university, Song Jiwen and Poplar Fruit were not only good at basketball, but they were also good at badminton. It could be said that this sport became popular on Higashiyama University's campus. "You still call her Little Chili?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "Aren't you afraid that she'll beat you up?" "What are you afraid of?" Song Jiwen chuckled and said. "I've also discovered that she's only fierce with her mouth, but she doesn't even have the strength to fight." Poplar Fruit's lips twitched as he muttered in disdain in his heart. "That's because she's magnanimous. If she really made a move, you would have to stay in the hospital for half a month." However, he didn't say much. Anyway, it was fine as long as these 2 enemies found a way to peacefully coexist. Poplar Fruit didn't have the energy to run over every day to persuade them to fight. Back in the house, Poplar Fruit asked Fong Beibei if she wanted to go. Her lips were no longer swollen, and the hickeys from the afternoon were almost gone. It was no big deal for her to go outside. "Sure," Fong Beibei said eagerly. "I'm a badminton expert." "Really?" Poplar Fruit looked at her suspiciously. Fong Beibei ran 800 meters, and had to walk 100 meters with her hands on her waist. She didn't look like an expert at all. "Of course. I'll show you later." Fong Beibei waved her small fist as she threatened. She wasn't scary at all. Instead, she looked cute. Kiki also wanted to go out and play, so Poplar Fruit gave Song Jiwen an affirmative reply. After changing into light sportswear, even Kiki changed into small sneakers and a small towel to absorb sweat on the back of a small t-shirt. Jean Z was also brought along, and the whole family was mobilized. Poplar Fruit drove them to Jinli District. "Isn't your sportswear a bit too short?" Fong Beibei asked as she sat in the back to take care of Kiki. It was indeed too short. It was originally a pair of pants, but the thighs were exposed. It was also a bit tight, just like a swimsuit shorts. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I haven't played badminton for a long time. This pair of pants was worn before, so it's normal that it doesn't fit now." Fong Beibei didn't dwell on the reason. She smiled and said, "Then when we go back, I'll help you pick a new pair online." Song Jiwen had seen Fong Beibei at Poplar Fruit's house before, but they weren't familiar with each other. Poplar Fruit introduced Chun Anlin to them again. "Sister-in-law is so beautiful." Song Jiwen and Chun Anlin laughed at the same time. In fact, they were both older than Fong Beibei, so they were deliberately teasing Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei didn't show any weakness. She stood beside Poplar Fruit, who supported her, and said with a smile, "No, Brother Mosquito's girlfriend is the beautiful one." "Who's his girlfriend?" Chun Anlin glared at the innocent Song Jiwen, pulled Fong Beibei and said, "Call me Sister Fong Beibei. I have nothing to do with this guy." "Hey, what's with your attitude?" Song Jiwen shouted in dissatisfaction. "You're saying it as if I want to have something to do with you." Poplar Fruit chuckled at the side. He didn't mind watching the show. After the last time, Poplar Fruit thought that Song Jiwen and Chun Anlin had reconciled. Now it seemed that enemies were still enemies, and they started to quarrel again in less than 2 sentences. "How's the preparation for your martial arts school?" Poplar Fruit asked with a little concern. Chun Anlin could solve the problem of money by herself, and Poplar Fruit didn't know much about operations, so he asked Song Jiwen to help. He only asked occasionally. "I haven't found it yet, but there's no hurry." He said that choosing a good location is more important than thinking of 10 marketing ideas. Chun Anlin shook her head with a calm expression. It was a world of difference from the way she used to chase after Song Jiwen. After chatting for a while, they walked to the basketball court. Song Jiwen was still nagging along the way. "Old Gua, why do you want to live at the school? That teacher's apartment doesn't even have a basketball court or a parking lot. Why bother?" Poplar Fruit chuckled and didn't refute, nor did he tell him the real reason. Fong Beibei's jealousy was a hobby between the two of them, so it wouldn't be nice to say it out loud. "Play well. Don't drag me down." Song Jiwen was ready to kick off, but he didn't serve. Instead, he glanced at Chun Anlin and said with a chuckle, "Go to hell." Chun Anlin gritted her teeth and said, "You're the one who's dragging me down. I think Brother Mosquito and sister-in-law are quite compatible." Fong Beibei snickered and said to Poplar Fruit, "Really?" Poplar Fruit turned to look at the pair of enemies, shook his head and said, "That's impossible, right? They can't wait to fight when they see each other. How can they be compatible?" "You don't understand. Beating is kissing and scolding is love. They haven't realized it yet." Fong Beibei laughed. Fong Beibei said, "I don't think Brother Mosquito is the kind of man who has a bad mouth, right? If he doesn't like it, why does he always make sister-in-law angry?" Poplar Fruit thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. Song Jiwen used to be a carefree and generous guy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had so many girlfriends. But recently his behavior was indeed a little abnormal. "It seems that Anlan is the same." Poplar Fruit nodded and described to Fong Beibei as he pondered. "Anlan also told me that after she met Mosquito, her temper became worse." "That's right." Fong Beibei smiled confidently. "They just haven't realized it yet." "Then should I tell them?" Poplar Fruit asked. If he could set them up, Poplar Fruit would be quite happy. "Of course not." Fong Beibei quickly waved her hand and said, "They can't be anxious. They're not ready to face their inner feelings yet." Chapter 690. Kiki, go to the side and play. You and Gold can't run in. Poplar Fruit pulled Kiki to the side of the court and exhorted. The badminton court in Jinli district was an indoor court. Although there were only 2 courts, because the weather was too hot, many people chose to swim or do other sports activities that were not too tiring. The badminton court, which was usually very popular, was now empty. It felt like the whole court was reserved, so Poplar Fruit and the others kept forgetting about Kiki's safety. Fortunately, before they started playing, Kiki ran in with Gold and reminded Poplar Fruit. "Why?" Kiki asked, puzzled. Her eyes were still staring at Gold, who was running around happily. "Because if Kiki runs in, it will be very dangerous." Poplar Fruit explained. Kiki's eyes followed Gold's bones to the other side. "Why?" "Because Dad and Uncle are playing badminton. If Kiki runs in, the ball will hit you." Poplar Fruit continued to explain. "Why?" Kiki finally turned her attention to her father. However, she tilted her little head and thought for a while. She still couldn't understand, so she continued to ask. "Because Dad and Uncle play very fast. If they want to win, they have to spike the ball hard. If the ball flies down, it is very likely to hit Kiki." Poplar Fruit still explained to his daughter very seriously. "Besides, look at the racket that uncles and aunties are holding. It is so long. What if it hits?" "Why?" Kiki seemed to be addicted to asking and continued to ask. Just as Poplar Fruit was racking his brains to think of how to explain to his daughter, Song Jiwen and the others who were next to them almost couldn't laugh anymore. This father and daughter, one kept asking questions as if he wouldn't stop until the pot was broken, while the other was too serious and explained endlessly. "Done." Fong Beibei smiled and ran over to pull Poplar Fruit up. She squatted down and handed a round ping-pong ball to Kiki. "Kiki wants to play with Goldie over there. Don't come here. Otherwise, Dad will lose to Uncle. Kiki doesn't want Daddy to lose, right? Fong Beibei touched Kiki's little head and said, Yes. Daddy is the best. Kiki nodded vigorously and said, Kiki will be obedient. Well, Kiki is so obedient. Fong Beibei kissed Kiki's forehead with satisfaction. Poplar Fruit saw that his daughter really ran to the side to play. He couldn't help but admire Fong Beibei's ability to discipline her child. Of course, Song Jiwen on the opposite side also laughed at him for being stupid. He said that meeting Fong Beibei was his blessing and so on. Poplar Fruit took into account Fong Beibei's physical strength. He let Fong Beibei stand in front, while he stood behind. Poplar Fruit's speed was fast, so it was convenient for him to put out the fire. Song Jiwen still had some skills. He served a mid-range ball, and the landing point of the ball was just on the line where Fong Beibei was standing. It was easy to cause Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei to make a mistake in snatching the ball at the same time. However, he was destined to be disappointed. Although Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had never played badminton together, the two of them had a tacit understanding. Fong Beibei stood steadily and did not move. Poplar Fruit bowed and shook the paddle, and the badminton flew back. However, it seemed that Poplar Fruit used a little too much strength. Although the speed of the ball was very fast, it flew past Song Jiwen and fell out of bounds. Song Jiwen retreated to the back and smiled proudly. Poplar Fruit had not played badminton for a long time. He did not control the strength of his paddle well. He knocked on the paddle surface in annoyance and was somewhat dissatisfied. It's only one ball. Continue. Fong Beibei smiled and shouted at the opposite side. It was Song Jiwen's turn again. This guy's biggest strength and weakness was that he was thick-skinned. He had tasted the sweetness of it last time. This time, he continued to hit the ball in the same position. Fuck, do you think I will fall in the same place for the second time? Poplar Fruit shouted. He stepped sideways and hit the ball in the same posture as before. This time, he used a lot less strength. The badminton almost did not fly over the net. It swayed and fell in front of Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen was dumbfounded. He waved his paddle and pointed at Poplar Fruit. He said helplessly, Fuck your luck. Luck is also a kind of strength. Poplar Fruit smiled. When the two of them played badminton, they liked to say some trash talk to provoke each other. They did not mean any harm, but they did not want to make the game boring. Poplar Fruit's smile had another meaning. This time, he figured out how to adjust his strength so that the badminton would not fly. Although he had only tried twice, Poplar Fruit was very familiar with his own body and muscles. Poplar Fruit was very confident that he could regain his strength. It was Poplar Fruit's turn to serve. Poplar Fruit passed the ball to Fong Beibei. The first two balls were a conversation between Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen. Fong Beibei and Chen Anlin had been posing for a long time, but they did not get anything. Poplar Fruit noticed that Fong Beibei's kickoff posture was very standard, just like what the teachers taught in university. However, before he could ask Fong Beibei with a smile if she chose badminton in her freshman year, Fong Beibei shouted, Sister Fong Beibei, catch the ball. The badminton drew a beautiful arc and flew toward Chen Anlin. Chen Anlin, who was so good at martial arts, actually had a flustered look in her eyes. She took 2 steps back, then quickly took a step forward, bent down and barely caught the ball. Although she caught it, the ball she returned was a little high and a little soft. At this time Fong Beibei, who was leaning in front, did not hold back. She quickly ran to the front of the net, shook her hand, and intercepted the badminton. Song Jiwen desperately tried to save the ball, but it was too late. Fong Beibei kicked off again. This time, Chen Anlin was not so nervous. However, her skills were really rough, and she was easily hit back by Fong Beibei. Song Jiwen returned a ball that was a little further away and hit the corner. Unfortunately, Poplar Fruit was very fast. With a gentle shake of his wrist, the badminton flew back and accurately landed between Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin, causing them to miss the ball. Needless to say, Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin were going to quarrel for a while. Poplar Fruit took advantage of this time to laugh and clap with Fong Beibei to celebrate their tacit cooperation. Song Jiwen's skills were better than Fong Beibei's. He could even tie with Poplar Fruit, who only had strength but average skills. However, no matter how good Song Jiwen was, he He could not carry the weak Chen Anlin and fight against Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. It was really as Song Jiwen said at the beginning of the game. Chen Anlin was dragging him back. It was no surprise that a one-sided situation happened. What surprised Poplar Fruit was that later on, Song Jiwen seemed to have changed his personality. He did not blame Chen Anlin at all. Instead, he changed into a gentle tone and taught her how to play the game, giving her a live lesson. This made Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei become their sparring partners. They did not dare to play too hard or too hard. Yonghua couldn't play to her standard at all, so she decided to multitask. She waved her racket as she walked, and at the same time, she winked at Chi-Chi, who was beside her, and had a lot of fun. Chapter 691. In the blink of an eye, it was the opening ceremony. There were still 5 days before Poplar Fruit left for Bali. However, Poplar Fruit didn't have time to think about other things, because he was standing on the rostrum. Because he had been betrayed by his teacher, he had no choice but to speak on behalf of the new graduate students. This was the first time Poplar Fruit had spoken in front of nearly 10,000 people. Although he had the experience of speaking in front of many people before, it had never been more than 200 people. Even someone as strong as Poplar Fruit couldn't help but feel his mouth and tongue dry and his legs weak. Poplar Fruit's strong memory was still his biggest support. His mind was blank at the moment, but he could still recall the speech he had written before from his memory. Even if it didn't work, he could still recite the speech and not embarrass himself. However, this was not what Poplar Fruit wanted. When he stepped on the rostrum, Poplar Fruit suddenly felt that this feeling was actually good. Although the scene was strange and the pressure was great, his heart was loudly telling him that this was a rare opportunity for him to practice. He couldn't just casually recite the speech and deal with it. After 2 seconds of silence, when even Chen Zongdai, who was sitting below, began to sweat for him, Poplar Fruit gently raised the corner of his mouth. His handsome face, which had been full of nervousness, suddenly changed into a bright and confident smile. The students who were holding the camera and recording for the school's TV station couldn't help but tremble. I think many students are wondering, who is this guy on the rostrum? Am I right? Poplar Fruit knocked on the microphone and said with a smile, including the students from the outer court, I guess they all want to know why they are being represented. And it's by an unknown guy named Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't play by the rules, which made the host on the rostrum and the leaders below the rostrum confused. However, it also made many of the new students who were lazily looking down at their phones raise their heads and look at the tall boy on the rostrum with interest. Well, to tell you the truth, a few days ago, when the school gave me the task of speaking on behalf of the graduate students, I actually refused at first. Poplar Fruit laughed. Many people below the rostrum couldn't help but laugh in a low voice. I ask myself, Poplar Fruit, how can you speak on behalf of more than 3,000 graduate students? What achievements can you brag about? Aren't you afraid of losing face? Poplar Fruit's questions were getting louder and louder, and the students below the rostrum, they felt that these questions were thrown to themselves. What kind of person is Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit frowned and tilted his head as if he was discussing an unrelated person. He answered his own question. First of all, he is a student. He graduated from Higashiyama University 2 years ago. After 2 years of struggling in society, he was admitted to Higashiyama University. Secondly, he is an unmarried father. He has a cute 1-year-old daughter and someone he likes. His life is busy but happy. Hearing the words unmarried father, the audience was in an uproar. The principal's assistant quickly turned to look at the principal. He didn't know if he should stop Poplar Fruit from talking like a dream. However, the principal was full of smiles and shook his head at him, indicating that he should listen. And then, the discussion below the rostrum didn't interrupt Poplar Fruit's recollection. He is also a freelancer. Of course, a lot of people say that freelancing is actually unemployment. This concept is a bit biased. I suggest that you read it this way, freelancer. I am in the translation industry. I have a job, but I am very free. There was soft laughter in the audience again. Although Poplar Fruit spoke in a normal way, and even a bit like he was chatting with everyone, there were not many students looking down at their phones. They looked at Poplar Fruit curiously on the stage. looking forward to what he would say next. I said I am in the translation industry. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled as if he was embarrassed. But it seems that I don't have many works to show. So far, I have only translated one work in the market, the biography of Steve Jobs. Well, it was the book that sold quite well last year. The audience was stunned for a moment, and then there was a burst of discussion. Many people immediately picked up their phones and searched for it online. There is another one that should be on the market in November this year. Poplar Fruit added. However, before he finished, his voice was interrupted by the applause from the audience. The applause was sparse at first, but after everyone received confirmation from the internet, they started clapping with all their might. The applause that resounded throughout the venue surprised Poplar Fruit, really surprised. In fact, he underestimated the influence of the biography of Steve Jobs. In the eyes of young Steve Jobs, he was a godlike existence. Even the haters could not ignore his greatness. Many people present had read the book. Even if they hadn't, they were familiar with the book because in October last year, it was discussed everywhere on the internet and in daily life. Poplar Fruit, because of the storm of public opinion, was also reported by major media in Guangdong and China for a period of time. The legendary translator was standing on the rostrum. Like them, he was a freshman at Higashiyama University. How could they not be surprised and proud? Thank you very much," Poplar Fruit said with some embarrassment. At that time, the book was praised and criticized. Because of the sudden death of Steve Jobs, I worked day and night for more than a month to translate it with my team members. To be honest, I was not very satisfied with the translation quality of the book. So, thank you very much for your tolerant applause. The audience smiled in a friendly manner and applauded for Yongguo one after another. I mentioned this book because it played a big role in my return to Higashiyama University. Poplar Fruit said sincerely. In the process of translating this book, I found that the knowledge that I learned during my 4 years of undergraduate studies was far from enough. Without systematic learning and theoretical support, I was destined to be unable to do it perfectly. So, I needed to go back to school to further enrich myself. Then this book also made my supervisor, the dean of the foreign languages school, Chen Zongdai, discover me. A fine steed is common, but a talent scout is rare. I'm very honored to be chosen by him, and have been learning from him since the beginning of this year. Poplar Fruit bowed in the direction of the teacher and said, "It was also because of this opportunity that I had the opportunity to start my graduate studies a semester in advance." Under the guidance of the teacher, in July this year, through the study of the mutual translation of German and Swedish, as well as the study of Hindi and ancient Sanskrit, I compiled a thesis on the theory of variation. It was also an honor for me to publish it in the journal Translator Expert. I also followed my supervisor to participate in this year's National Translation Conference, Poplar Fruit said. Although many people were not familiar with the language world, and did not know that Translator Expert was a journal that many people could not get into, everyone knew that it was very awesome to be able to publish a thesis and be qualified to participate in a conference. The students in the audience were stunned by the news that Poplar Fruit threw out one after another. Their mouths were slightly open, as if they could not believe it. Was this really the classmate that they first saw, who sounded very ordinary and was no different from them? Chapter 692. This kid was born for such a big occasion. The vice principal, who was sitting next to Chen Zongdai, whispered in his ear, "After so many years at Higashiyama University, this is the first time I've seen such a talented kid." In the past, at the opening ceremonies of Higashiyama University, there were some representatives who were eloquent, and their speeches were not necessarily worse than Poplar Fruit's. There were even some who had more experience than Poplar Fruit, but no one was more comfortable than Poplar Fruit in his speech. Their nervousness ran through the entire speech. Even if they knew the script by heart, they still needed to look at the script to prevent themselves from forgetting their lines. Poplar Fruit was nervous at first, but after he spoke the first sentence, his voice became more and more stable, and his expression became more and more natural. He was like a big boy chatting with his good friends. The way he spoke made people feel that he was not superior, but rather friendly. He had not learned how to give a speech systematically, so he did not know how to change the tone of his voice to get the audience into his rhythm. But he had an advantage, which was that his voice was very pleasant to listen to. It was slightly deep, with a magnetic, but clear voice. Plus, his Mandarin was as standard as a news broadcast, so it was easy for people to have a good impression of him. Poplar Fruit is not a celebrity. He has some achievements, but in our Higashiyama University, he is still very inconspicuous. But since I'm standing here, I'll be bold enough to share some of my insights with everyone, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. After throwing away the script and chatting for a while, Poplar Fruit finally returned to the main topic. As if their minds were connected, Poplar Fruit glanced at the back of the venue. With his superb eyesight, he clearly saw Fong Beibei sneaking in with Kiki in her arms. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, but his happy smile did not disturb Poplar Fruit's speech. The power of multitasking did not let people notice Poplar Fruit's distraction. What I want to say is that the first thing is to learn well. It's an old topic, but everyone listen to me first. Why did I say that? Poplar Fruit smiled and told the story of how he had no backing and no experience in the foreign trade company, but still managed to get 3 consecutive raises in a year by relying on his excellent foreign language skills. The old venue for Higashiyama University's opening ceremony was shabby and unstable. It had always been criticized. The only thing that was praised was its sound system. At least, Fong Beibei, who was standing at the back, could clearly hear Poplar Fruit's voice. Kiki also heard it. She looked around and asked in confusion, "Hey, where's Papa? Why can't I see Papa?" The little girl still couldn't tell the difference in the sound. Fong Beibei smiled and pointed at the Poplar Fruit on the stage. "Look, isn't that your Papa?" Kiki was very happy, but Fong Beibei didn't tease her anymore. Fong Beibei stood quietly and looked at Poplar Fruit from afar. Today's uncle was not as low-key as before. He stood on the stage, as if there was already a light on his body, and no one could ignore it. His voice was still so gentle. Fong Beibei could also see Poplar Fruit's eyes through the space barrier. Fong Beibei didn't know why, but she felt like crying, not because of sadness, but because pride and happiness filled her whole heart. You may have just entered the school and don't feel the importance of knowledge to your future, but please believe that the knowledge you learn in the classroom and the knowledge you read in the library will be the foundation of your future in society. Poplar Fruit said seriously. The audience was a little depressed. Poplar Fruit chuckled. "Do you think what I said is still a little empty?" Although Poplar Fruit had never studied before, he still knew the importance of interacting with the audience during a speech. The audience also cooperated and gave him a few good-natured laughs. In July this year, did everyone watch Unexpectedly? Poplar Fruit suddenly asked without rhyme or reason. Many people nodded confusedly. This online micromovie became popular all over China as soon as it was released, and it had a very high response among the young people. However, no one knew why he suddenly mentioned this in such a serious occasion. Poplar Fruit quickly told them why. "The big hoodwinker at the beginning of the movie was me." Whoa. There was an uproar in the audience, and then everyone applauded. This time, the applause did not drag on for too long because everyone was used to Poplar Fruit's habit of being calm, but suddenly throwing out shocking news. They also knew that he never beat around the bush, so it would definitely not be wrong to applaud first and ask for confirmation later. "My acting skills are very average." Poplar Fruit chuckled. The audience responded with good-natured laughter. They also knew that in terms of acting skills, the newcomer Baiku, Zimo, and the unknown Cheonjuan who appeared in the micro-movie of Unexpectedly were much better than Poplar Fruit's big hoodwinker. Otherwise, his fans would not have skyrocketed because of that micro-movie. "It's true." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "If it wasn't for the huge sponsorship from my translation company, I wouldn't have had the chance to make a cameo." The freshmen in the audience looked at each other and began to quiet down. They did not expect Poplar Fruit to make fun of himself. Sponsorship in exchange for a cameo opportunity. This would be a scandal no matter where it was. However, Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "They still intend to invite me to make a cameo appearance in Unexpectedly, which has already started filming. Of course, I also rejected it." "Why?" Someone in the audience shouted. Although their voice was soft, It represented everyone's thoughts. This student, are you asking why I rejected this very interesting movie, or are you asking why I was still invited to make a cameo appearance? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Ask both. The audience cheered. The reason I rejected it was that I really didn't have time. The reason they invited me was because I know a lot of foreign languages, and they happened to have a cameo that was suitable. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, everyone should remember Wang Dachui's omnipotent translator, right? I was the one who dubbed all the foreign languages translated by the translator in the movie. Oh, everyone recalled the behind-the-scenes scene at the end of the short movie where the beast swore that the great hoodwinker was actually a demon who knew more than a dozen foreign languages. They could not help but applaud. After the applause subsided, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I brought this up not to sell an advertisement to get everyone to pay attention to unexpectedly, but to tell everyone that as long as you have talent, you will never lack the opportunity to succeed. But if your knowledge is unable to support you, even if the opportunity comes, you will not be able to grasp it. His sincere and powerful conclusion made Poplar Fruit's funny experience, which he had just treated as a joke, sublimate. It also put his speech back on track again. This time, even the principal applauded for him. It seems like it's a little over the time. The male host next to her quietly reminded the female host who was engrossed in the speech. It's okay. Can't you see that the principal is very happy? Just let him continue. In any case, other leaders also like to go over the time limit. Poplar Fruit's speech is much more interesting than theirs. The female host replied softly. The last 2 chapters have a lot of principles. I'm not trying to brainwash everyone, but Poplar Fruit needs an opportunity to improve. This is the first step for him to become an excellent speaker. As for why he needs to be an excellent speaker, let's guess. Chapter 693. No matter how many times you rehearsed before, only in actual combat could you really feel your own shortcomings and make great progress. Poplar Fruit was like this. He had just unfolded his speech on the stage and reorganized it as if he was chatting casually. However, Poplar Fruit was not completely immersed in the interaction with everyone. His other mind suddenly found a problem. He had been talking for 6 minutes. You don't even know it's over time. Originally, he only had 5 minutes. Yangguo's hand trembled slightly and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. However, he had just started to talk about his second experience. Fortunately, no one interrupted his speech, which made Poplar Fruit very grateful to the host. In the sudden panic, Poplar Fruit was able to keep calm and continue to talk, and then quickly adjust back. The audience of nearly 10,000 people did not notice the difference in Poplar Fruit. I need to adjust the rhythm, otherwise, I won't be able to finish in 5 minutes. Poplar Fruit reminded himself in his heart. He kept a calm smile on his face and continued to talk according to his thoughts just now. While thinking about how to adjust the rhythm in his heart, Poplar Fruit's change was smooth. He gradually reduced the interaction with the audience. Just reduced, not completely abandoned. He also gradually increased the speed of his speech to ensure that everyone could hear him clearly. Most people did not notice. Only the deans and principals who often spoke to the students, and some people who had done research on speeches, noticed the change in Poplar Fruit's rhythm. Is this an improvement? Chen Zongdai, who was sitting in the audience, could not help but feel a little surprised. He knew that this kid was very good. Compared to other people, he could accept it calmly. Yes, Poplar Fruit had improved, and he found it during the speech and corrected it himself. His evilness could not be blamed for other people's ridicule. Unconsciously, Poplar Fruit had reached the final conclusion. He said as if he was sighing with emotion and confiding in his heart. Students, we are all ordinary people who came to Higashiyama University to rewrite our lives. Human characters are not easy to write, and it's even more difficult to write brilliantly. Poplar Fruit said sincerely, I hope that we can all cherish the good times in college, learn well, and write a person who can stand firm in society. Then we can look at the world and write a person who can support the heavens and the earth. Finally, when we have the ability, don't forget to care about public welfare, transmit positive energy, and write a meaningful and valuable person. Everyone knew how to talk about great principles. If there was no foreshadowing at the beginning, The following summaries would be nothing but empty words. However, Poplar Fruit had used his legendary experience to convince the tens of thousands of people below the stage. Therefore, after 3 consecutive comparisons, his conclusion was powerful and resonant, like a sudden clap of thunder. Thank you. Poplar Fruit's gratitude was drowned out by the thunderous applause. Even the leaders in the front row applauded him under the guidance of the principal. Standing on the stage, feeling the applause of the crowd and the admiring eyes of many of his junior brothers and sisters, Poplar Fruit was a little excited, but he didn't feel complacent. He felt a little bit like his soul was out of his body, standing high above the old auditorium and looking at himself. If he acted very proud, it would really be a funny comedy. Thinking back, he didn't have anything to be proud of. Although he had added some of his own experiences and thoughts into the speech, it was a little like chicken soup for the soul. However, in terms of the theme, it had already been limited. It was just a political speech that followed the main theme. Poplar Fruit thought about it and let it go. After he came down, he bowed to several teachers and went back to his previous seat in a low-key manner. Only by being unperturbed by honor and disgrace could one be able to advance and retreat freely. Of course, after the opening ceremony, Poplar Fruit was still surrounded by his classmates, including his roommates. Most of them were students from his college. The translation of the biography of Steve Jobs was not an ordinary title. However, it seemed that some of the girls were here to see the handsome guy. Seeing that they were secretly glancing at him, and even seemed to be eager to have a go, Ding Wenjiang kept winking at Poplar Fruit and teasing him. This won't do. Poplar Fruit saw Feng Beibei holding Kiki's hand and coming to the aisle. He felt as if he had been pardoned. He quickly excused himself from the crowd and ran to Feng Beibei. Seeing Poplar Fruit holding my daughter, the girls looked at each other and were very disappointed. Poplar Fruit actually said that he was an unmarried father, but everyone was so excited that they forgot this point. Baby, how was my speech? After saying goodbye to the teachers and classmates, Poplar Fruit and Feng Beibei walked back to the teacher's dormitory. Kiki didn't even need to be carried by them. She ran in front with her hair tied in 2 buns, like a little fairy leading the way. Feng Beibei held his hand. This time, she didn't get jealous because Poplar Fruit was surrounded by a group of girls. Instead, she was very happy and said, "Well said. I think you're even better than those speakers on TV. Just now, someone behind you said that you have been speaking without a script. Awesome." After that, Feng Beibei laughed. Poplar Fruit was a little confused about Feng Beibei's temper. According to his understanding, Feng Beibei would be a little angry at this time. And then he would coax her for a while to make her happy. "Aren't you angry?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said carefully, "Just now? What? Do you want me to be angry every day?" Feng Beibei said angrily, "I'm not unreasonable. I was afraid that you would be angry just now." Poplar Fruit said, "There were so many girls around, so I couldn't go to you first. I actually saw you at the back during the speech. There were many girls around you, which means that you were good at what you said. They all treat you as their idol." Feng Beibei said with a smile, "Uncle is also my idol." Poplar Fruit was in fear and trepidation, thinking that Feng Beibei was being sarcastic. "Are you really not angry? Really?" Feng Beibei twisted Poplar Fruit's waist and said discontentedly, "I'm not a girl who likes to be jealous. Actually, it was just, I've thought it through." Feng Beibei pulled Poplar Fruit's hand in front of her and said happily, "You're so outstanding. If I get jealous every time I see a girl, won't I be depressed? Anyway, you're not a womanizer. I just need to believe in you." Was it last time? Poplar Fruit couldn't say anything touched, so he pulled Feng Beibei into his arms and let go of her shoulder. Feng Beibei also took the opportunity to hug Poplar Fruit's waist. Although the posture was a little awkward, they walked slowly and were very happy. Just like this, live a simple life with no distractions. Chapter 694. At 10 o'clock in the evening, 1 hour before Feng Beibei went to bed, no matter what Yongguo's previous habits were, he would put down his other work and sit with his girlfriend, enjoying the sweetness of love. They didn't do anything, they just chatted. It seemed like it was a habit left over from the phone call. The two talked about everything, as if they always had endless topics to talk about. Uncle, I still don't know how many foreign languages you know. Fang Beibei asked. I just went online to look. It seems like there are more than 10 languages. Yes, currently I know 13 languages. Poplar Fruit laughed. How many languages are you proficient in? How many are you just familiar with? Fang Beibei curiously asked. You can say that I'm proficient. Poplar Fruit felt that he was a little embarrassed to say that he was very good. He hesitated and said, these 13 languages, I can speak them fluently, and I can also use their language to write articles. Poplar Fruit was being modest. Half a year ago, Poplar Fruit had already reached this level. However, in this half a year, he did not learn any other languages. Instead, he increased his research on other languages. Even if it was the most obscure Nanua language, Poplar Fruit was currently not much worse than their own linguists. Talent. Talent. Fang Beibei said with jealousy. I have to learn English so painfully, but you can learn another language by blabbering. That can't be helped. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Who told me to be so awesome? Who told you to be awesome? Later, I'll sell you to plow the fields. Fang Beibei said angrily. Poplar Fruit did not deliberately want to brag about himself, and Fang Beibei was not really jealous. The two of them were just bickering, which was quite interesting. Poplar Fruit simply pretended to be awesome to the end. He raised his head and mooed. Hee hee. You've learned it very well. Fang Beibei's laughter was as clear as a wind chime. She covered her mouth, turned around, raised her right hand, and gently pinched Poplar Fruit's nose. She said with a smile, Water Buffalo, do you know that you're very cute? Moo moo. Poplar Fruit replied with a smile. Fang Beibei twisted her body and turned around so that Poplar Fruit could reach the other side of her hair. She placed her slender legs on Yanggua's knees. She had just taken a shower and her skin was cool. It was extremely comfortable. Poplar Fruit could not help but shift his gaze from Fang Beibei's hair to her long legs that were as white as lotus roots. Fang Beibei keenly sensed it. She patted Poplar Fruit's thigh and said shyly, Don't look. Poplar Fruit composed himself and continued to comb Fang Beibei's hair. He suddenly felt that the baby was so beautiful at this moment. Her skin was moist and lustrous, and there was a hint of red in her white skin. He could not help but want to pinch and kiss her. Uncle, can you learn as many foreign languages as you want? Fang Beibei tilted her head and thought. Don't move. Poplar Fruit turned her head over. You're right. I learn these foreign languages very quickly. It takes me less than a month to master a language. But to truly master a language, it takes a long time to study it. Poplar Fruit laughed. Let's not talk about other languages. I dare not say that I have mastered our Chinese. Why do you say that? Fang Beibei asked curiously. Chinese is broad and profound. How can a kid like me understand it? Poplar Fruit said. I'm now a translator. At most, I translate some novels with strong stories. I don't dare to blaspheme the works of masters with profound meanings and profound writing skills. Turn it over. Chinese can't write that kind of feeling. Poplar Fruit thought for a while, and gave an example. For example, if it's a work of Lu Sun's level, I can at most translate it to Guoxiaoxi's level. How can that be? Fang Beibei said anxiously. I saw the travel diaries on your blog. They were written very well. The words used are not necessarily worse than those of the great writers. Poplar Fruit had a private blog for him to practice his writing skills. He would post some of his thoughts on the blog, but he would hide these articles. Only Fang Beibei could see them because she had his account. That's because they're all made up of words. Poplar Fruit laughed. I can only use beautiful words to fill the emptiness of the mind. I can't use simple words to achieve the effect of shocking the soul. This is the gap between me and those masters. I have to settle down and continue to learn and explore. In fact, Poplar Fruit had high expectations for himself. With his level, let alone translating, he could even publish his own works in a publishing house. The requirements for publishing books were so low now. Fang Beibei muttered. Anyway, I think you're pretty good. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Poplar Fruit kissed Fang Beibei's perfect face intimately and said with a smile, I'm very happy that you can like my article. No, I'm serious. Fong Beibei waved her hand and said angrily, "It's really well written. Even if you weren't my boyfriend, I would say the same thing." "What? You actually said that I'm not your boyfriend?" Poplar Fruit pretended to be angry and said, "Hurry up and say it." Fong Beibei also played along with him. She shook her head and said with a smile, "I won't say it, I won't say it, I won't say it." Poplar Fruit suddenly hugged Fong Beibei's head, lowered his head, and suddenly kissed her red lips. After a while, Poplar Fruit raised his head and looked at Fong Beibei's red cheeks and said with a smile, "Are you going to say it or not?" Fong Beibei hugged Yanggua's neck and tilted her head up. She giggled foolishly and said coquettishly in a nasal voice, "Kiss kiss, it seems that she would rather die than submit." Poplar Fruit was angry and decided to double the punishment. He hugged Fong Beibei's waist with his big hand and fiercely kissed her. Fong Beibei could only passively enjoy it. She closed her eyes and felt Poplar Fruit's domineering and gentle. The domineering thing was Poplar Fruit's big hand around her waist. He hugged her tightly as if he would never let go of her hand. The gentle thing was Poplar Fruit's lips. He pecked her gently and slowly, as if her lips were a cup of fine wine that needed to be tasted with emotions. It seemed that something was different today. Fong Beibei suddenly felt a nimble tongue glide across her lips, pressing against her pearly white teeth. Fong Beibei grabbed Poplar Fruit's clothes from the back. She closed her eyes and looked a little flustered. That bad thing only licked her gently. Perhaps because she was too flustered, Fong Beibei loosened her tightly closed teeth. Before she could defend herself, Poplar Fruit took advantage of her weakness. By the time she braced herself to resist, she was left with only one last defense. After Poplar Fruit invaded, he planned to stay and not leave. Fong Beibei was not willing to let him go. She bravely faced him and the two of them played catch and kill, having a lot of fun. Chapter 695. Happy days always pass quickly. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had just spent a few beautiful days together, and now it was time for them to part. In the past 5 days, Poplar Fruit had presided over an unofficial exam, but in the eyes of more than 40 third-year French students, it was no less important than the final exam. The fiercest competition was the written exam. Yin Xingyu and Xiao Xiaowei, the two girls with the best grades in the French class, also worked hard during the holidays. Even though everyone else had made great progress, they still firmly held on to the top 2 positions. The competition was very fierce, and in the end, Yin Xingyu won with a gap of 1 point. Xiao Xiaowei was very unconvinced. She wanted to take back her spot in the oral exam. However, what surprised everyone was that the first place in the oral exam was not her, nor was it Yin Xingyu, nor was it one of the top students in the written exam. Xian Jing, the quiet girl with the same name as her, won the last place to go to Bali with her fluent French. Everyone was convinced that they lost. The gap was too big. Poplar Fruit knew the reason. This girl was very creative. At the end of the previous semester, she asked him about the way to practice oral English with foreigners online. Then, when everyone else was preparing for the written exam, she found another way and spent 3 months practicing oral English. Although her ranking in the written exam was a mess, even falling behind Wang Yuba, in the end, she was still the one who had the last laugh. Poplar Fruit felt that there was nothing to be scheming about. In society, there were many people who used rules to win. Being too straightforward would only lead to hitting a wall. Besides, good oral English itself was a sign of strength. Otherwise, why would there be separate oral and written exams? Although Poplar Fruit advocated the academic route, he was not a stubborn person. Students who were good at oral English were far more popular in the employment market than students who were good at writing. This was an indisputable fact, and Poplar Fruit knew it. Because this time, Poplar Fruit was using the name of Xingdao translators. Poplar Fruit couldn't just let them enjoy the reputation and not do anything. Next, Poplar Fruit would ask Yao Dehua's secretary to guide Yin Xingyu and Xianjing to apply for passports. The plane tickets would also be sent to them at the end of the month. On Yao Dehua's side, Peng Yu acted very quickly. Within a few days, he had discussed some details of the cooperation with Yao Dehua. After finalizing the details, he called Poplar Fruit to sign the contract. Poplar Fruit's muddle-headed trip had turned him into the owner of an unlicensed publishing house. Of course, This was only a matter of time. With Pang Yu's efficiency, Poplar Fruit believed that the publishing house would be ready before he returned in October. Boss Yang, haha brother, I'll have to call you Boss Yang from now on. Yao Dehua teased him back then. Brother Yao, you're making fun of me again, aren't you? With our relationship. Do you need to call me that? Poplar Fruit laughed as he retorted. Poplar Fruit was the boss. This was an indisputable fact. Of course, this wasn't the first time Poplar Fruit was the boss. Counting carefully, Poplar Fruit also owned shares in a few companies. The most important ones were Wan Hetiani and Ludong Zhuiyue. Firstly, it was Wan Hetiani who starred in Unexpectedly. Poplar Fruit heard from Yaosho that they were preparing to release the first season of Unexpectedly in mid-September. It was said that they were copying American TV series and had already filmed a few episodes. Currently, they were filming the extended version of the Golden Week in October. After Unexpectedly became popular, the main actors also became famous. Zimo replaced Yaosho, who retired from management, and became Wanha's personal director. Baiku also received a few movie dubbing invitations. What made Poplar Fruit even happier was Cheonjuan. The production team of a period comedy series in China contacted him for an audition. In the end, he got a supporting role in one fell swoop. Compared to how he was a year ago, he now had a bright future ahead of him. Not to mention the 2 recommendations from Blizzard, Ludong also received funding from Poplar Fruit. The development of IMMT was progressing rapidly. It was already in beta testing this month, and was expected to be released on Android and iOS in November. Poplar Fruit had a beta test account, but he didn't have time to play it, so he gave it to Song Jiwen, who was bored at work. According to Song Jiwen's feedback, the game was quite interesting. His colleagues also liked it, and Poplar Fruit had no choice but to help him get a few beta test accounts. Because he suddenly remembered, Poplar Fruit looked for Zheng Yujie to ask about his business, but was scolded by Zheng Yujie again. Other than the rich second generations, Poplar Fruit was probably the only person in the world who didn't do anything. He invested close to 10 million RMB, which was a huge sum of money, but didn't ask about it for a few months. What a weirdo. Poplar Fruit obviously didn't ignore it because he was lazy, but because he felt that professional matters should be left to the professionals, and he didn't want to mess up other people's plans. Moreover, he was already so busy with his own business. Where would he find the time to manage a company far away in Beijing? Poplar Fruit could multitask, but he didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, and definitely couldn't split himself into 2. On the campus, Yang Gua and Wang Yuba had been running around for a few days. They went to the relevant departments of the school several times, and finally established their Public Welfare Association. The club's name was Multidimensional Charity Teaching, and the meaning was, of course, their long-distance education. In order to further let everyone have a more intuitive understanding of their club, Poplar Fruit also asked Wang Yuba to add a small title under the club's name. Long-distance education, let the mountain children's dreams sail. Generally speaking, the establishment of a club was definitely not that simple. It definitely had to go through layers of approval from the school, and it would drag on for at least a month. Poplar Fruit felt that his application was quite smooth, and he knew that it must have been teacher Chen Zongdai who secretly gave him a call behind his back. Wang Yuba was still very helpful. He had been in university for 2 years, and he had a wide range of contacts. He also knew a lot of capable people. Under his persuasion, Poplar Fruit's club was established, and more than 10 students from different schools joined. If it weren't for Poplar Fruit's insistence that only students who were willing to invest in charity work, there would be more people joining. One had to know that these people weren't new students, and they had all trained in other clubs before. They would become the backbone of this charity club. Within the club, Poplar Fruit was the president, and Wang Yuba was the executive vice president. At first, Poplar Fruit wanted to be a hands-off manager again, and let Wang Yuba directly become the president. However, Wang Yuba said that this was against the rules, and Poplar Fruit had to carry the banner of multidimensional. Without him standing at the front as a spiritual support, even if Wang Yuba was good at dancing, he wouldn't be able to lead the club forward. Well, no matter what, the club was established, and Wang Yuba could lead it on the right track. The children in the Hmong village could also continue their lessons, and Poplar Fruit could be a little relieved. His story in Yangcheng had come to an end. Next, Poplar Fruit would head to Bali to take on his next challenge. Chapter 696. At Charles de Gaulle International Airport in Bali, a Boeing 777 that had been flying in the air for 12 hours slowly landed with the sound of braking air. With the announcement in Chinese, French, and English, Poplar Fruit took off his blindfold and woke up Kiki, who was sitting next to him. Then he started to pack his things and get ready to get off the plane. It felt like he had arrived in another world. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki and dragged his suitcase towards the exit. He could still hear the voices of many Chinese tourists around him. However, when he looked into the distance, he saw that most of the people were foreigners with white and black skin. In fact, Poplar Fruit was not unfamiliar with this experience. He had been to the United States before. He sighed because 12 hours ago, he was still reluctantly saying goodbye to Fong Beibei at the airport in Guangzhou. Now that he was standing in a foreign country, he was somewhat absent-minded. This was different from the last time he went abroad. Last time, Poplar Fruit went with a large team from Dongxin. He had his own people to take care of everything. When he was abroad, there were Chinese people to pick him up and serve him. This time, Old Man Ardel knew that Poplar Fruit's French was not worse than his, who was born and raised in France. Therefore, he did not find a Chinese translator for him. Even when they were going abroad, he only asked someone to send 2 plane tickets to Poplar Fruit, and did not say anything else. Well, this made Poplar Fruit feel like he was on a brave adventure. He had come to a completely foreign country, and now he had to explore it on his own. This was Poplar Fruit's initial thought. Ardel and Poplar Fruit were very close. Of course, he would not trick him. Poplar Fruit walked out of the security checkpoint and saw a big black man standing in the hall. He was holding a sign with his Chinese and English name written on it. It was the driver. Poplar Fruit followed him to the parking lot. He opened the door of a Rolls-Royce. Poplar Fruit suddenly saw Old Man Ardel sitting inside. "Leon, come and sit down, haha." Ardel smiled and raised his glass to him, inviting him to sit down. Poplar Fruit shrugged and got into the car without fear. Kiki was also in his arms. "Mr. Ardel, long time no see." Poplar Fruit refused the whiskey Ardel poured for him and asked for a bottle of coconut milk for Kiki. He smiled and said, "I didn't expect that you would come to pick me up in person. You're old, you shouldn't be running around like this. You should just send a secretary to pick me up." Ardel laughed. "That won't do. You said it yourself. We are good friends. If I don't come to pick you up, it means I'm not good enough as a friend. If I wasn't worried that the paparazzi would leak your news in advance, I would have personally raised a sign to welcome you." "Haha, Mr. Ardel, you are so humorous." Poplar Fruit laughed heartily and said, "But you said paparazzi? That's not right, is it? Paparazzi follow big stars. You're not handsome, and you're not a big star. Why would they follow you?" "Am I not handsome?" Ardel said angrily. "When I was young, I was also the target of many beautiful models in the fashion industry. Audrey Hepburn also wanted me to star in her movie." Audrey Hepburn and the Givenchy family had a complicated history. However, Ardel was really something. "Wow, our eternal goddess has been invited. Well, I admit that you are still handsome even now," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Poplar Fruit was so familiar with Ardel that he didn't mind joking with him. After joking with him, Ardel explained the situation to Poplar Fruit. In half a month, Bali would usher in the fashion industry's premier event, Bali Fashion Week. Every year at this time, stars and celebrities from all over the world, regardless of whether they were invited or not, would gather in Bali and strive to show their faces at this world-famous event. This was also the busiest time for the tabloid paparazzi. They were all fighting to capture the most attractive news. What was the most attractive news? It was definitely not the clothes launched by a certain brand. That was something that only fashion magazines cared about. What ordinary people wanted to see the most was the scandals of those stars. Although I'm not a big star, I'm still a member of the Givenchy family. During this time, there are always some stars who come to visit or attend the reception we hold. The paparazzi are watching closely, trying to find some gossip. Ardal didn't care much about gossip, but he wanted poplar fruit to be the Givenchy family's secret weapon this year. If he was exposed in advance, how could he keep the word secret? My little angel, do you still remember me? After chatting with poplar fruit, Ardal's interest switched to Kiki, who was staring at him with her big eyes. Kiki hadn't learned French for a long time, so she didn't quite understand Ardal's question. Poplar fruit scratched his head. He had forgotten to let Kiki watch Papa Baba, a very famous French cartoon, at home to familiarize herself with French. Grandpa is asking if you remember him. Poplar fruit translated to his daughter. Kiki released the straw, nodded, and said, Kiki remembers. Then you have to call him Grandpa. Do you remember what Dad taught you before? Poplar fruit said with a smile. How do you say Grandpa's French? Chi-Chi thought seriously for a moment before asking hesitantly. Apu. That's meow language. Halib machine. Kiki continued to guess. That's Korean. Poplar fruit was confused. Kiki and Fong Bebe watched Korean variety shows and learned quite a bit of Korean, but why didn't she remember the French that he taught her? Grand. Poplar fruit reminded her. Kiki's eyes lit up. She finally remembered. She called out in a clear voice, Grandpa Papa. Ardal laughed happily. What about greeting? Poplar fruit asked. Bonjour Grandpa Papa. Kiki spoke more and more fluently. Her language talent was really not inferior to poplar fruit's. Kiki's performance also made Ardal, who was already a grandfather, smile so much that his wrinkles stretched out. When they just arrived at Bali, although Ardal was anxious for poplar fruit to join the model training, he was still kind enough to send poplar fruit to the hotel first, and let him rest for the night. The training would only start the next day. They stayed at the Shangri-La Bali Hotel, which was only 1 block away from the famous Champs-Élysées. Even if they went to the balcony on the other side of the hotel, they could still see the tall Eiffel Tower. Under the night sky, the Eiffel Tower was brightly lit, like a pagoda studded with diamonds. Of course, poplar fruit did not stay in the expensive room with the pagoda, but his room was not bad. There was a balcony where one could read and drink coffee leisurely. The sky blue carpet, wall cloth, and other decorations looked very comfortable. Even so, poplar fruit's room still cost more than 800 euros a night, which was more than 5,000 yuan in RMB. Givenchy was really rich. Chapter 697. Baby, I arrived last night. I forgot to account for the time difference and thought it would be late at night over there. Poplar fruit laughed. And Kiki was also jet-lagged. She woke up several times in the middle of the night and kept her company. That's why I'm calling you now. Poplar fruit was sweating profusely. While talking on the phone, he pushed open the door of the gym and walked out. He almost bumped into a foreign woman with dark brown hair. I'm sorry. Poplar fruit quickly apologized to her, but he didn't care. He nodded and continued to talk to Fong Bebe on the phone while leaving. No, I was just apologizing to someone. I was talking to you and almost bumped into a foreigner. Haha. I saw that Kiki was asleep, so I ran out of the gym to play. Let me tell you, the hotel's gym. Poplar fruit was immersed in his own world. He didn't know that the person he almost bumped into was still looking at him strangely. Charlotte? Kasiragi, a beautiful woman with dark green eyes. Unfortunately, she was completely ignored by poplar fruit just now. She had an extraordinary identity, that was the 6th heir to the throne of Monaco. In other words, everyone could call her princess. In modern society, the title of princess was not as famous as it was in ancient times when the monarchy was rampant. However, even if a princess had declined, she was still a princess. If she inherited the throne, not only would she sit on a large piece of land, not even as big as a county in China, but she would also have a net worth of more than $1.2 billion. Princess Charlotte was very famous in Europe, not just because of her identity. Her beauty and control of fashion had made her appear on the cover of top fashion magazines many times. She was even named one of the top 10 beauties in the world in 2005. How beautiful she was not decided by others. Maybe the East and the West had different aesthetic standards. Poplar fruit was startled and didn't feel stunned. He didn't compare, but subconsciously, He felt that this rough-looking woman was not as beautiful as his baby. Charlotte curiously stood there and looked at the back of the boy who just left. She didn't think Poplar Fruit had offended him. Although they almost bumped into each other, didn't Poplar Fruit politely apologize to her? She was curious because of Poplar Fruit's attitude towards her. That's right. That kind of disregard, as if he saw an ordinary passerby on the street, made her feel a little frustrated. To be honest, although Yang Guo had an Asian face after working out, the tight undershirt still vividly reflected his tall and strong body. No matter what, he looked like a handsome guy. Even if she wasn't tempted by him, she should be tempted by him. He must be playing a trick. Otherwise, why would he choose to create a chance encounter in this place? Princess Charlotte didn't believe that anyone would come to the gym early in the morning to work out. If she wasn't in a bad mood because her mother, Princess Caroline, the Grand Duke of Monaco, suddenly asked her to reconsider her marriage a few days ago, she wouldn't have avoided the bodyguards for several days and come to the empty gym in the morning to vent her anger. That must be the reason. Princess Charlotte thought self-righteously. She smiled coldly, went back to the gym and locked the door. Her pride didn't want to believe that a man would completely ignore her, even if he was an Asian man. Poplar Fruit had no interest in understanding the complex thoughts of a foreign woman who just passed by. He was talking to Fong Beibei about his feelings in Bali. The balcony is also very beautiful, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It's full of beige houses and green sycamore trees. If there's a chance, I'll definitely take you here for a walk. Don't worry, in Bali with Mr. Ardal, we have a foundation. When we come here, someone will take care of us, haha. Okay, Fong Beibei said happily. How was your class today? Poplar Fruit asked. Did the teacher agree to your grouping? Agreed. Fong Beibei nodded and said, but we're still hesitating on whether or not we should give everyone a copy of the secret book. Brother Wang Di said not to give it to us, but Sister Shenhong said that if you agree, it's okay to give it to everyone, because we're all competing with those foreign universities. If one more person wins the prize, it's also a collective honor. What do you think? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. I think. Fong Beibei said softly. I think that if there's something good, it should be shared with everyone. Last year, several brothers won the prize and stood up to tell us some of their experiences in preparing for the war. They didn't hide anything. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, our baby is a good person. Well, you can show it to the teacher and ask him to give each team a copy. This secret book is not a big secret. As long as you put your mind to it, others can also do it. Yes. Fong Beibei smiled and said, I'm worried about your opinion. Otherwise, I would have shared it with everyone. I'm also worried that if we win the prize, our brothers and sisters will think that we're too selfish. As they chatted, the topic returned to Poplar Fruit. Fong Beibei said with a smile, Uncle, how is your model training? Do you have to walk around on the T-shaped stage? Poplar Fruit said, I don't know. I read the basic introductory book. It seems that I have to shape first, and then practice my eyes, expressions, standing posture, steps, and so on. I'm dizzy after reading it. It's only been 2 weeks. Can you meet their expectations? Fong Beibei asked worriedly. It's only a short time. I read on the internet that those models have been training for a long time. Well, I also read that many European models are found in South America. They have been training since they were young. I can't compare with them. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, I guess Ardal also wants me to walk on the T-shaped stage as a surprise attack. Givenchy has so many famous models. I can just blend in with them. No way. Fong Beibei waved her small fist and said unhappily, Uncle, since you're going to be on the stage, you have to do your best. You can't let others look down on you, and you can't look down on our country. He didn't know that she was a little angry. In fact, Fong Beibei was reluctant to leave Poplar Fruit. She talked to Poplar Fruit for 1 hour and 35 minutes, which broke the record for the longest conversation between two people. If Kiki hadn't woken up, Poplar Fruit would have continued to talk to her. After hanging up the hot phone, Poplar Fruit smiled slightly. In fact, he almost couldn't help but tell Fong Beibei that he would go to the United States to see her, but he held back the words. It would be boring to say it out loud. He had to leave it as a surprise. Chapter 698. It was almost 10 o'clock, but no one came to pick him up. Poplar Fruit wore his sunglasses and sat on the balcony, enjoying the cool breeze, leisurely drinking the oolong tea delivered by the hotel. Kiki also imitated her father, wearing the beautiful sunglasses she bought at the airport, lying on the comfortable sofa with her legs crossed. Her posture was very enchanting. Can training really be so leisurely? Poplar Fruit's heart flashed a trace of doubt. Knock, knock, knock. Just when Poplar Fruit thought he could enjoy leisurely, his fantasy was shattered like a mirror by a series of knocks on the door. He opened the door and saw that it was the black driver from yesterday. He stood at the door and said without a smile, "Mr. Leon, we're leaving." Poplar Fruit patted Kiki, who was hiding behind him timidly. He knew yesterday that this guy really had facial paralysis, and no matter what he said, his feelings wouldn't change. So Poplar Fruit didn't exchange greetings with him. He just smiled and said, "Okay, I'll pack." There was nothing to pack. Yesterday, he heard that Poplar Fruit packed some children's products for Kiki and an iPad for Kiki to pass the time. Then he took his daughter and walked out with the black driver. The elevator went downstairs and stopped on the 5th floor. When the elevator door opened, Poplar Fruit saw the woman he met in the morning at the entrance of the gym. However, this time, there were 2 bodyguards in black suits beside the other party. Each of them was a tall and sturdy white man. They were also wearing headphones for communication. They looked at Yonghua and the others with extremely fierce eyes. "She's not easy to deal with," Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. However, he had nothing to fear. Instead, he smiled and nodded at the woman in a friendly manner. He didn't talk to her, mainly because the 2 bodyguards' defensive appearance was a bit uncomfortable. Originally, the 2 bodyguards saw that there were 2 people in the elevator. Kiki was too small to be a threat, and planned to let them go down first. Even though the elevator was huge, they would wait for the next one. However, Princess Charlotte surprised them by saying, "Let's sit here." Then she led the way in. They had no choice but to follow. Princess Charlotte spoke in Italian. She was fluent in French, Italian, and English, and also spoke a bit of German. In the morning, she heard Poplar Fruit speak French very well, so she changed to Italian, thinking that Poplar Fruit wouldn't understand her conversation with the bodyguards. Yonghua looked at her in surprise. Of course, he could understand Italian and misunderstood. He thought that his apology in the morning was in vain because the other party was in Italian. He hesitated whether to apologize again, but he felt that it was a bit abrupt. Moreover, the other party's bodyguards were still staring at him. Poplar Fruit chuckled, shook his head slightly and became silent. He didn't think about Princess Charlotte anymore. Instead, he whispered a few words to Kiki, and then followed Brother Hay out of the elevator. Princess Charlotte was actually secretly sizing up Poplar Fruit and his daughter in the elevator. At first, she thought that this chance encounter was created by this Asian man, and that delicate "my daughter" might be a prop he used to confuse her. After having her suspicions, Princess Charlotte couldn't suppress her curiosity, and secretly looked at Yonghua and the others. Slowly, Princess Charlotte's thoughts started to waver. It doesn't seem to be an act? Princess Charlotte felt that the way Yonghua and the little girl were secretly whispering and exchanging glances was very heartwarming. It felt like a real father and daughter pair. Could it be that I'm mistaken? Some people said that there were 2 most beautiful moments in a woman's life. One was the happy moment when she put on a wedding dress for the first time, and the other was the happy smile when she held the baby she had carried for 10 months from the doctor's hands. In fact, it was the same for men. When he showed his fatherly side, his charm would also increase. Although Poplar Fruit's fashion sense made Princess Charlotte feel like she couldn't criticize him, and his messy hairstyle, it couldn't be helped. Poplar Fruit's hair had never been cut since it grew out. Ardell was worried that those unprofessional hairdressers in China would destroy the plasticity of Poplar Fruit's hair. It made Princess Charlotte feel like this man was from the countryside. But the smile between him and Chi-Chi made him radiate charm all over the place. Princess Charlotte had seen a lot of handsome men, stylish men, and even men in high positions, but Poplar Fruit gave her a charm of contrast that she had never felt before. He was obviously very young but very mature. The seed of curiosity began to be planted in Princess Charlotte's heart. This wasn't love, because Poplar Fruit's oriental face wasn't her type. But this didn't hinder her desire to know. She really wanted to know what kind of secret was hidden behind such a man. Poplar Fruit didn't know. When the elevator opened, he politely gestured for the lady to go first. However, as professional bodyguards hired by the royal family, the two strong white men wouldn't allow the princess to show her back to two strangers. They coldly looked at Poplar Fruit, motionless, and even stopped Princess Charlotte from going forward. The atmosphere suddenly became cold. Kiki felt the change in the atmosphere and fearfully hugged Poplar Fruit's neck. For her, there was no safer place in the world than by her father's side. At this time, Brother Hay, who had been expressionless, said, "Sir, let's go." Although he was asking for instructions, Brother Hay walked out of the elevator first and then turned to wait for him, as if to say, "Don't dawdle, just follow me." Poplar Fruit looked at him in confusion, but he also felt the hostility of the two strong white men. Shrugging, Poplar Fruit and Brother Hay walked out of the elevator. They didn't greet each other. They were just strangers who met by chance. And Poplar Fruit and Brother Hay walked to the entrance of the hotel. Princess Charlotte looked at the two bodyguards with some displeasure. These two were sent by the royal family, and were loyal guards of the Moroccan royal family. It was just that they were a little pedantic. For some non-existent dangers, they repeatedly overstepped their boundaries and interfered with her freedom. When they walked out of the door, Princess Charlotte looked around and found that Poplar Fruit got into a black Rolls-Royce and drove off in a few seconds. She was still thinking about whether to apologize to the Asian man for the rudeness of her bodyguards, but in the end he didn't seem to care at all. Really? Princess Charlotte looked at the two bodyguards with displeasure and vented her anger on them. Her Bentley soon arrived. The moment Princess Charlotte got into the car, she heard the conversation between one of the bodyguards and the headset. "Ardal? Mr. Givenchy's car? Got it, okay." The bodyguard seemed to be relieved. Since it was a guest of a big shot, he could be a little relieved. "Givenchy's people? Model? Doesn't look like it. Interesting." Princess Charlotte smiled slightly and subconsciously touched the Gucci bag in her hand. She was a part-time model for Gucci. Chapter 699. The training place was in the Givenchy mansion on the Champs-Élysées. However, Black was taking Poplar Fruit to Ardal's villa first. At noon, Ardal was going to have lunch with Poplar Fruit. Ardal's villa was in the outskirts of Bali, near the 15th district of Montrouge. It was too far away from the training place. That was why Ardal didn't let Poplar Fruit stay in his villa. "Mr. Ardal, your villa is very beautiful." Poplar Fruit was full of praise. He also threw out a lot of modifiers he learned from French medieval novels, which made Ardal, who had a classical education, feel very comfortable. "Haha, Leon, you really know how to talk. If there's a chance, I will definitely invite you to visit my big manor in Normandy. There are large grasslands and beautiful fruit trees. You will see real beauty there. Of course, it's a pity that you can't drink. Otherwise, you can taste the grape wine that I made myself." Ardal waved his hands and said happily, "I'm looking forward to the opportunity to accept your invitation." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Today's arrangement is like this." Ardal's mind jumped quickly. "In the afternoon, I will ask a hairstylist and a makeup artist to do your hair and makeup. This may take a long time. I have a banquet to attend in the evening. But it doesn't matter. My housekeeper will arrange everything. Tomorrow, I will ask Renault, Black's driver, to take you to the mansion for training. I have already arranged everything. You need to spend more time learning," Ardal said with a smile. "No problem." Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "But I hope my daughter can watch. I don't feel comfortable leaving her in the hotel." "Haha, of course, no problem. I have already prepared a life assistant for you. She will help take care of your lovely little angel during your training." Ardal laughed. He took a small box from the housekeeper and said with a smile, "I was so busy with work that I forgot that this gift is for our lovely little angel." Poplar Fruit did not refuse this time. He knew that in the eyes of foreigners, gifts represented friendship and other feelings. It was normal for friends to give each other gifts. If he did not accept it, it would be too estranged. The necklace that Ardal gave to Kiki was a black velvet necklace. It looked a bit like the necklace that Natalie wore in Lyon, the Killer. However, this necklace didn't have the little sun pendant, and it seemed to be made of high-end materials. The velvet felt very delicate and comfortable to the touch, and the patterned buckle was golden. When Li Du touched the poplar fruit, it didn't seem to be gilded, but was actually made of gold. Kiki, come, this is a gift from Grandpa. Poplar Fruit squatted down and put it on Kiki with a smile. He didn't like to let Kiki wear those jewelry because he felt that it would damage Kiki's delicate skin, but this beautiful velvet necklace was still very close to her skin. This is a new accessory that we launched earlier this year. I specially asked the designer to redesign it according to the shape of a girl's neck. Lovely little angels will like it, Ardal said with a smile. Kiki really liked it. She touched the small necklace around her neck and wished she could find a mirror to look at it. Poplar Fruit smiled and touched her little head, saying, Kiki wants to say thank you to Grandpa. How do you say thank you? Merci. Kiki bowed to Ardal obediently. Ardal was very pleased and smiled from ear to ear. Leon, your daughter has inherited your excellent language talent. She speaks French very well. Indeed, although Kiki only knew a few words of French, her pronunciation was very standard, which made the few French people present feel very comfortable. Come, my lovely little angel, let me introduce you. This is my little granddaughter, Luo Danny Ardal. Ardal pulled out his little granddaughter, who was hiding behind the door and peeking, and planned to introduce a playmate to Kiki. She is 8 years old this year. Haha, she is 6 years older than your daughter. Although Luo Danny was 6 years older than Kiki, looking at her shy appearance, she was not as bold as Kiki. Poplar Fruit also pushed Kiki out and helped her translate Ardal's words. Then he said with a smile, Kiki, say hello to your sister in French. Kiki stepped back and leaned on her father. She touched her father's fingers and whispered, but Kiki doesn't know how to say it. Poplar Fruit taught her word by word and Kiki soon grasped it. Although she was also a little shy, she still plucked up the courage to say hello to the little sister in the beautiful dress. Luo Danny's face was red. She hid behind Ardal and watched. At first, the two children were a little strange. They looked at each other and didn't know how to communicate. But after all, they were children. After a while, they quietly sat together. When Poplar Fruit and Ardal chatted for a while, they were already dancing and chatting together. The language barrier was really not a problem. Chi-Chi could speak some simple English, and Luo Danny could also speak some simple English. With the addition of body language, the two of them were able to communicate with each other. Especially Kiki, she was a little strange with people she didn't know well, but once she got familiar with them, she would become a chatterbox, chatting with her friends about all kinds of interesting topics. Of course, Poplar Fruit and Ardal sounded a little childish. Kiki had a very strong affinity. Even children with strong psychological defenses were inexplicably close to Kiki. Luo Danny was the same. Ardal was surprised to see that his little granddaughter, who was usually timid and introverted, actually took the initiative to invite Kiki to her room to see her collection of Barbie dolls. Leon, I have to say you are amazing, and so is your daughter, Ardal said with emotion. The reason why he said this was because after working with Yang Guo in Yangqing for a period of time, when he returned to France, he still felt that his ideas were gushing out like a fountain. His creative ideas were endless, as if he was under a spell. Meeting Poplar Fruit was like the biggest turning point in his life, although he was a little old, and also the beginning of his good luck. There was news from the top management of Givenchy that the chief designer, Mr. Ricardo, intended to train him as his successor. How could Ardal, who loved design so much, not be overjoyed? Maybe it's not me who is amazing? Poplar Fruit smiled. In fact, I didn't help you much. If you think it's you, then I think it's Kiki. Poplar Fruit pointed at Kiki, who was walking out with Luo Danny, and laughed. Don't forget, it wasn't me who helped you find the splash ink design, it was her. Chapter 700. Poplar Fruit was not praising himself. His feelings were completely objective. The makeup artist's nimble hands and magical makeup skills made Poplar Fruit's facial lines look even more handsome. Compared to the sleepy look from before, his face now looked much more three-dimensional. It made Poplar Fruit's originally good-looking high nose bridge and soft cheeks look even better. His eyebrows were trimmed and were as thick as before. However, they were more well-proportioned and looked less messy, making him look even more handsome. Poplar Fruit's eyelashes were considered long among men. The makeup artist did not do anything to them. Instead, she used a white eyeliner pencil to draw on them. Not only did it have a brighter effect, but it also made Poplar Fruit's eyes, which were as deep as the starry sky, look even more spirited. Poplar Fruit's skin was originally fairer. This was something that even Poplar Fruit himself did not understand. He often basked in the sun because of his training, but no matter how much he basked in the sun, his skin was still very fair and smooth. Sometimes, even Fong Beibei was very jealous. The makeup artist applied some matte foundation on his face to make his skin look even more masculine. Poplar Fruit's lips were thinner and looked like those young hunks from South Korea. This conflicted with his physical toughness, so the makeup artist added some contours and applied a natural colored lipstick. This made it look slightly thicker and also enhanced Poplar Fruit's sunny temperament. Of course, there were many details that Poplar Fruit could not see, but overall, it did improve his appearance by a lot. Coupled with the British-style curly hair that was done beforehand, Poplar Fruit felt like he was a completely different person. He was so handsome that Poplar Fruit himself could not open his eyes. Alright, saying that he was the most handsome man in the East was a bit of an exaggeration. Perhaps he could be ranked in the top 10 of the current Asian male celebrities and celebrities. Clothes. And clothes. The hairstylist nagged. The clothes you're wearing are too degrading. I really don't understand how you chose them. They're so ugly. No, I have to call Arto back. I can't let these damn clothes ruin everything for us. Poplar Fruit's expression kept changing. He really wanted to punch him. Although the clothes he was wearing weren't branded goods, they were personally picked for him by Fong Beibei online. How dare you slander Bao Bao's feelings? You're courting death. However, the hairstylist ignored Poplar Fruit's murderous glare. He took out his phone and was about to call Arto. What kind of clothes did he prepare for Leon? Alright. You're so stupid. The makeup artist poked the hairstylist's head with his right index finger and said, Arto is now attending the Louvre Festival. Why are you bothering him? Besides, we just want to see the effect. We don't need any special costumes. Suits are the most suitable for men. Arto's villa definitely doesn't lack Givenchy suits. The two hurriedly ran out to ask the housekeeper for the suits, leaving Poplar Fruit alone in the dressing room. Looking around, Poplar Fruit wanted to scratch his head, but he was afraid of ruining his hairstyle. He rolled his eyes, ran to the place where he left his bag, and took out his phone. Seeing that there was no one around, Poplar Fruit happily took all kinds of selfies in front of the mirror. Selfies really didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. Even Poplar Fruit couldn't help but feel proud when he saw how handsome he looked after the makeup. He thought to himself, take a picture and show it to Bao Bao tomorrow. After a while, the two hurriedly ran back. They pulled Poplar Fruit and ran to the cloakroom. This cloakroom was not for Arto's own use. It was specially used to store Givenchy's designs. Sometimes, designers also needed to appreciate other people's works to find inspiration. How is my daughter? Poplar Fruit broke free from the two workaholics and asked the housekeeper. Everything is fine, sir. The housekeeper bowed and said with a smile, after dinner, she will play with the young master in his room. Please don't worry. Oh, okay. If she's sleepy, please take care of her for me. Kiki usually goes to bed around 8:30 to 9 o'clock. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I'm worried that she won't be able to see me and won't want to sleep. No problem, sir. The housekeeper said politely. The butler said politely. Do you need us to send food over? You've already missed dinner time. What dinner? The hairstylist shouted impatiently. Is it more important to try on clothes or to eat? After that, the two dragged Poplar Fruit away again. Poplar Fruit could only stay with them on an empty stomach. A white shirt. Only a white shirt, which has the highest requirements, can match your temperament. The The hairstylist rummaged through the clothes hanging in the cloakroom, then came out of nowhere. Poplar Fruit took the clothes and looked around, trying to find a fitting room to change. "Ah, what are you thinking about? Just change right here," the hairstylist urged. Poplar Fruit looked at him speechlessly. "You're shy now? We don't mind." "Why do you mind?" The makeup artist also came over with a pair of trousers, covering her mouth and laughing. "Wrong. It's because you don't mind at all that I mind," Poplar Fruit complained in his heart. In the end, Poplar Fruit changed on the spot. The two curvy women were much better now. At least they wouldn't stare at his abs as if they were prey. The fabric of the clothes was really good. Although it didn't look much different from a normal shirt, the smooth and soft feeling brought by the poplin made Poplar Fruit feel that he didn't want to wear a normal shirt anymore. "No, the sleeves are too long. Take it off, take it off." The hairstylist went back. The makeup artist took the opportunity to let Poplar Fruit try on the charcoal gray flannel trousers he picked. The two ran back and forth more than 10 times. The clothes that Yonghua threw aside were no less than 20. In the end, they nodded their heads in satisfaction. A slim-cut white shirt with metal buttons, a striped round-necked vest that covered the lower edge of the shirt collar, a double-breasted jacket with real leather sleeves, motorcycle trousers with real leather legs, and a pair of black smooth calfskin boots with white stitches. Handsome. This is the masculinity I want. This is the sunshine I want. The makeup artist seemed to have gone limp. He said with a sobbing tone, "Are you a prince from the East? How can you look like a noble in motorcycle trousers? No, I think you're a professor in a university. No, you should act as 007. Only you can save the world like a medieval knight." His trembling words were already somewhat incoherent. They had never done clothing matching before, but for the first time, they felt a suffocating sense of accomplishment. Chapter 701. In fact, Poplar Fruit felt that the clothes they chose were not as good as the ones Ardal had designed for him. The Chinese-style clothes designed by Ardal might be more compatible with his temperament, but Poplar Fruit did not say it out loud. Poplar Fruit was also a little happy to wear the clothes they chose. This was a new experience. He rarely wore such leather pants and boots, nor did he try on such a trench coat, which was generally popular in the West. The moment he looked in the mirror, he had the illusion that he was born and raised in the West. In terms of the British style, he really had the temperament of a prince. Although Poplar Fruit preferred the Chinese style of bookishness, it did not mean that Poplar Fruit did not like to transform into a prince. Even if he was an uncle, he still had the heart to cosplay. Poplar Fruit was very happy to spend another half an hour with them to take the final makeup photos. He also asked them for 2 photos to save in his mobile phone. Perhaps, including the 2 mischievous twigs, they did not know how the final makeup photos they took today would affect Givenchy's choice later. They were so hungry that they did not have the energy to think anymore. No, under the groaning of the makeup artist, Yonghua used makeup remover to remove the results of his over an hour of hard work. "Let's go eat." "How can we eat with such heavy makeup?" Poplar Fruit laughed. Although he looked good with makeup, Poplar Fruit still preferred to wear no makeup. Unless it was for training or going on stage, Poplar Fruit felt that it was best to keep his original appearance. "My hair," the hairstylist shouted, pointing at Poplar Fruit's head. "Don't worry," Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled. "I won't touch your hair. I hope it won't be messed up when I wake up tomorrow." "No, I'm going to ask Ardal to do your hair and makeup while you're at the Fashion Week." The makeup artist clenched his fists and said, "You are the most beautiful piece of art given to us by God. I won't allow anyone to ruin you." "Is there a need to be so exaggerated?" Poplar Fruit smiled indifferently, then pointed at the food on the table that the chef had remade and said, "Aren't you guys going to eat? Such delicious caviar, I'm going to finish it." Perhaps Poplar Fruit didn't know about the reputation of the Wanwan duo in the makeup industry. Not only were they from Ardal, but they were also the exclusive hairstylists and makeup artists of the Givenchy family. They were also the top hairstylists and makeup artists who had once served the Grand Dukes and Princes of France. In recent years, they had been poached by the Givenchy family with a high salary. At this moment, Poplar Fruit only had eyes for the French delicacies on the table. As a gourmet and a foodie who had been hungry for a long time, Poplar Fruit had no time to talk to them. He just waved his knife and fork and started to eat heartily. The Wan duo couldn't stand it anymore, so they nagged Poplar Fruit again. "Leon, you're using the knife and fork in the wrong way. This will ruin your noble image." After working together for an afternoon and an evening, the two of them had become familiar with Poplar Fruit. In fact, the two of them were not easy to make friends with. Even when they were serving the nobles, if they didn't like it, they wouldn't hesitate to give up their responsibilities. The fact that they could be so close to Poplar Fruit could only be said to be because of the unpolished jade that was Poplar Fruit. They couldn't wait to stare at Poplar Fruit all the time to make him more perfect. "Let's eat, let's eat. Let's eat first. I'm starving," Poplar Fruit said impatiently as he ate the steak with traces of blood. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit didn't want to learn, but there was an old saying in China. Don't talk when eating, don't talk when sleeping. Eating was eating, so why was there so much attention and nonsense? After the meal, Poplar Fruit seriously learned how to eat Western food elegantly from them. Poplar Fruit learned very quickly. After all, Poplar Fruit's ability to control his body had reached a very fine level. Although he couldn't do it as easily as a real noble, he could imitate it very well. The makeup artist and hairstylist were full of praise for him. He had learned another pretentious skill. That was what Poplar Fruit thought in his heart. It was really useless. He couldn't put his elbows on the table, couldn't point his knife outwards when using it, and had to put down his knife and fork in the shape of an 8 when eating. These rules were completely, other than looking good, there was no practicality at all. Anyway, when Poplar Fruit ate, he didn't think about how to be elegant. What he wanted was comfort and freedom. There was no point in throwing away the watermelon and picking up sesame seeds. When he went to find Kiki, there was a small incident. According to the housekeeper, Kiki and Luo Danny, my daughter, were having too much fun in Luo Danny's princess room. They were so tired that they fell asleep at 9:30. Due to etiquette, Poplar Fruit was not allowed to enter Luo Danny's room. Poplar Fruit had to be blocked outside the door. He looked at the housekeeper helplessly and said, "Well, then I'll have to trouble you to take my daughter out. I'm going to take her back to the hotel. Master Ardal has told us that you can stay here for the night and go back tomorrow. The room has been prepared for you." The housekeeper bowed and said humbly, "The young master likes your daughter very much. She is allowed to rest in the young master's room." Although he knew that the housekeeper meant well, why did the housekeeper's words sound a little uncomfortable? Maybe he wasn't used to these aristocratic styles? Poplar Fruit had read similar dialogues in some medieval novels, but it didn't mean that he could accept these disgusting rules. Anyways, Ardal had gone to the Louvre Museum in the second zone to attend some kind of banquet. He wouldn't be back for the whole night. Her other two new friends had also gone back to their own little world. Yangguo wasn't in the mood to stay here alone anyway. "No thanks. I want to go back to the hotel. I have to attend the training tomorrow morning. If I spend the night in the villa, I won't be able to arrive on time tomorrow," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I wonder if Mr. Renault has rested?" In the end, the housekeeper asked the housekeeper to take Kiki out of the room. Then, the housekeeper arranged a car to send Poplar Fruit back to the hotel. When Poplar Fruit returned to the room, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Poplar Fruit helped Kiki change into comfortable pajamas, then took a shower and went to bed. Today, it took him so long just to take a photo. Even though Poplar Fruit had a strong physique, he still felt a little tired. It seemed that becoming an international supermodel wasn't as easy as he thought. Poplar Fruit rested his head on a soft goose feather pillow, looked up at the blue ceiling, and thought quietly. There would only be more challenges in the future. Could Poplar Fruit hold on? Chapter 702. Shangri-La was worthy of being a world-famous high-end hotel. Its gym facilities were very complete, and there was even a specially designed area for guests to practice yoga. Poplar Fruit could be said to be extremely satisfied with the gym because the space was big enough, and the equipment for training strength was good enough. It was more to his taste, and it made him feel very comfortable. The main reason was that when he came over at 4:30 in the morning, there was not a single person in the gym. No matter if he was running, playing with dumbbells, or practicing boxing, no one disturbed him. This feeling of booking the entire gym was really good. Generally, Poplar Fruit would only sweat after high-intensity exercise. When he trained at 6 o'clock, his whole body was dripping with sweat, but his body felt very good, as if he had done a full-body massage. When he woke up earlier, he sent Fong Beibei a few photos of himself from yesterday on WeChat. At that time, Fong Beibei was still in class, so she didn't reply in time. Now that he was done training, Poplar Fruit picked up his phone and looked at it. There were a lot of notifications. It seemed that his photos also shocked the baby. Wiping his hair with a white towel, Poplar Fruit looked down at his phone, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Fong Beibei's replies were also very interesting. Poplar Fruit looked at his phone as he opened the door of the gym. When he was about to step out, he suddenly heard an ear-piercing scream. Princess Charlotte was very annoyed today. Because she attended a banquet yesterday, she woke up late in the morning, and her behavior of sneaking into the gym was discovered by the bodyguards. Although they didn't stop her, she once again lost her freedom. There was a tail following her. Just as she angrily walked to the gym and was about to push the door open, the door opened without warning, and then a hairy white head suddenly appeared in front of her. Alien. Princess Charlotte suddenly saw this scene in anger, and her mind went blank, and she cried out in horror. Poplar Fruit was also shocked. He didn't know that his appearance with a white towel and his head lowered would make people mistake him for an alien. When he looked up, his expression tightened. There was no problem with Princess Charlotte. They had met twice yesterday and could be considered acquaintances. The first time was like today, they had almost bumped into each other. However, behind her was a white bodyguard that he had seen in the elevator yesterday. He didn't know if it was because of Princess Charlotte's scream, but he reflexively pulled out a gun from his waist. When Poplar Fruit saw that the black Glock was about to raise its head, his breathing suddenly stopped. Princess Charlotte was still in shock. She saw the white thing in front of her shake and then disappear. Behind her, there were sounds of fighting. Poplar Fruit dodged the woman in front of him, and then jumped. Before the bodyguard could react, Poplar Fruit performed a standard military grappling hand. There was nothing special about Poplar Fruit's moves. Any Chinese Special Forces soldier could perform them, but he was fast. Poplar Fruit did not give the other party a chance to pull the trigger. His finger was stuck on the bodyguard's pulse, and with a squeeze, the bodyguard's hand holding the gun instantly went numb, and the Glock fell to the ground. Roar! The white bodyguard, who was as strong as a polar bear, was a top bodyguard serving the royal family. He still had some skills. The moment his wrist was locked by Poplar Fruit, he reacted and roared, then swung his left elbow backward. That elbow, which was as big as Poplar Fruit's knee, was very frightening. If an ordinary person was hit by it, they would probably have a concussion. However, although Poplar Fruit was not very strong, he was completely superior to him in terms of strength. Friend. Poplar Fruit stretched out his other hand to grab his elbow, and shouted in Italian, misunderstanding. Although he knew Italian, his mother tongue was French. The white bodyguard was not in the mood to translate Poplar Fruit's words. He was shocked and angry. He could not believe that his muscles, which were thicker than Poplar Fruit's by more than one size, were so easily subdued. Of course, he did not only have one way to attack as he came from Blackwater. He forcefully knocked his boots on the ground, and with a flash of light, a dagger-like blade popped out from the heel of his boots. Yang Guo was vigilant at all times. When the bodyguard was lying on the ground and swinging his leg like a scorpion, he felt the wind behind his head. Poplar Fruit locked his hand, jumped forward, and dodged the blade on the white bodyguard's boots. Then he quickly hooked the white bodyguard's thigh with his leg and sat back down. This time, Poplar Fruit completely locked the white bodyguard's hand and leg joints. Unless he was a rubber man who had eaten the devil's fruit, it was impossible for him to break free from Poplar Fruit's hands. The mobile phone that had just been removed by Poplar Fruit happened to fall at Poplar Fruit's feet. Poplar Fruit did not have the spare hand to hold a gun at the moment, so he had to step on it with one foot. He turned his head and said to the frightened woman in Italian, "Hey ma'am, I'm really sorry for scaring you just now. Please explain to your bodyguard that this is a misunderstanding, okay?" Princess Charlotte was scared silly. She asked in her native French, What are you going to do? Why is she speaking French again? Poplar Fruit was confused by her. He shook his head and explained in French, I don't want to do anything. This is a misunderstanding. Your bodyguard is overreacting. Let him go. Princess Charlotte still looked at Poplar Fruit with some fear. She recognized Poplar Fruit at this time, but she still could not believe her eyes. How could that weak, Asian man subdue her bodyguard so easily? Okay. Poplar Fruit shrugged his shoulders. He also felt that the bodyguard in his hand was not resisting so much, so he patted him on the shoulder and stood aside. He did not forget the pistol. When he got up again, he picked it up in his hand. The white bodyguard got up and twisted his sore joints, but when he saw Poplar Fruit holding the gun he had just dropped, his face suddenly changed. Princess! Be careful! The bodyguard appeared in front of Princess Charlotte in a flash. With his huge body, he immediately covered her completely. Princess? Poplar Fruit thought he heard wrong. Don't be nervous. He smiled, and his hands moved quickly. With 2 clicks, the magazine of the Glock in his hand was removed. Even the bullet that was stuck in the chamber of the gun was removed by him. Resisting the urge to completely dismember it, Poplar Fruit tilted the muzzle to the ground and handed it back to the bodyguard. At this time, the tense atmosphere eased. Madam, I'm sorry for my rudeness. Poplar Fruit saw that the bodyguard was still wary of him, so he did not want to talk more. He lowered his head and picked up the towel and phone he threw on the ground, smiled and left. Chapter 703. Princess, I'm sorry, it's my fault. After Poplar Fruit left, the white bodyguard realized that his back was drenched in sweat. He apologized to Princess Charlotte in shame. Tai. Princess Charlotte was still in a daze as she looked in the direction Yang Guo left. She frowned and asked, Who do you think he is? Who is he? The white bodyguard named Tai thought of Yang Guo's terrifying skills. He didn't have the ability to resist at all, and he was familiar with guns. He couldn't even see how Yang Guo had pulled out the bullet. He said seriously, he is a dangerous person. He's also an interesting person, right? Princess Charlotte didn't say it out loud. She thought about the 3 times she had met Poplar Fruit. He changed his hairstyle? He's not as sloppy as before. I didn't see him clearly. Did he get into Mr. Givenchy's car yesterday? Princess Charlotte thought for a moment and asked. Yes. Should we get someone to check his background? Tai put the Glock back into his holster and covered it with his jacket. Let's check it out. Princess Charlotte's eyes sparkled with curiosity. I want to know what kind of person you are. Fluent in foreign languages, a good figure, and fatherly love. Oh right, he can speak Italian. Princess Charlotte felt a little ashamed. It seemed that the Italian language she had deliberately changed yesterday was a ridiculous play in his eyes. This man's smile is so evil. Princess Charlotte thought about Poplar Fruit's strange smile, and began to feel unhappy. Poplar Fruit didn't know that his imitation of a gentleman's smile, in order not to embarrass his countrymen, was misunderstood. He also didn't know that he had almost had a conflict with the princess of a country. He didn't have time to deal with this foreign woman. He quickly took his phone, and went back to his room to call Fong Beibei. Fortunately, the hotel was carpeted, so the phone didn't break when he threw it away in a hurry. Just now, Fong Beibei sent a lot of exclamation marks, and then she blurted out nicknames like Uncle Sherlock, Uncle Schumacher, and so on. She even sent a voice message with a smile, saying that even if Yang Guo cosplayed, he would not be as handsome as him. Poplar Fruit was so angry that he wanted to fly back to China and give her 2 slaps on the head. Of course, this was only a small joke between the two. After the call, they chatted affectionately. Uncle is so handsome with makeup. What should I do? Fong Beibei sighed. I feel ashamed standing next to you. Idiot, what are you talking about? Poplar Fruit laughed. No matter how handsome I am, it's just makeup. That's not the real me. Besides, our baby is the beautiful one. She looks like a fairy. I'm the one who's not worthy of you, right? The two chatted for an hour, and in the middle Kiki got up. The little girl was probably still immersed in yesterday's language environment, so she spoke a foreign language mixed with French to her father. Poplar Fruit turned on the speaker, so Fong Beibei was confused by Kiki's foreign language. If Kiki's voice was not clear and pleasant, Fong Beibei might have thought that Poplar Fruit was hiding a mistress in a golden house. This time, Poplar Fruit didn't go downstairs to eat breakfast. Instead, he asked someone to send it to the room. Kiki was not used to Western food, so Poplar Fruit gave her a spaghetti. After eating it, Kiki was no longer interested. Papa, Sister Luo Danny said. Kiki was drinking milk, and from time to time, she would share with her father the interesting things that my daughter and Luo Danny played together yesterday. Although from an adult's point of view, Kiki's words were very childish, and even funny, Poplar Fruit still responded eagerly. Kiki, do you want to learn French? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Sister Luo Danny's native language is French. It's still difficult for you to communicate with her in English. Kiki looked at her father in confusion. For Kiki, what Poplar Fruit said just now was a bit difficult to understand. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's just like you and Brother Xiong'anshuan. If you can't speak Miao language, you can't talk to Brother Xiong'anshuan." But I can talk to Sister Luo Danny. Kiki scratched her head and said in confusion. "It's not the same." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Brother Xiaofeng can also speak Mandarin, but he still prefers to speak Miao language." Oh. Kiki nodded. She understood and said with some expectation, "Kiki also wants to learn French." Sister Luo Danny said that she wants to teach Kiki to sing. "Then Dad will speak French with you in Bali. You said you wanted to learn," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "But Kiki doesn't know how to speak? I don't understand what Dad is saying," Kiki said with some frustration. "Don't worry, Dad will slowly explain and analyze it to you," Poplar Fruit comforted her. On _in, a_rain_sans_Mao. Kiki put her hands on her knees and obediently waited for her father to explain it to her. This sentence means that if you don't pay, you get nothing. On Azar, Poplar Fruit patiently explained it to his daughter until Brother Hay's driver, Renault, arrived. "Everything is ready. Let's go." Poplar Fruit was carrying a small backpack with one hand and holding Kiki's little hand with the other hand. He smiled at Brother Hay and Renault. He didn't look like he was going to attend a training session. Instead, he looked more like he was sending his daughter to kindergarten. Today, Poplar Fruit still didn't wear any makeup. Even the hair that he had permed yesterday was only casually brushed after washing it. However, he paid special attention to Kiki's dressing. Not only did he comb her hair into a beautiful ponytail, but he also put on a pink, beige cat t-shirt and denim shorts. She looked like a lively and cute tomboy. This was also chosen by Fong Beibei. She said that Poplar Fruit was a rough man, and it didn't matter what he chose, but Kiki couldn't be looked down upon outside. Poplar Fruit agreed. After getting in the car, Poplar Fruit was surprised to see that there was another person in the car. He had seen her before. It was the manager of Givenchy in Beijing, Fong Min. This was the second time that Poplar Fruit had seen Fong Min, but he still recognized her at a glance. "Fong Min, why are you here?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "It was not easy to meet an acquaintance in a foreign country. I'm here to be your assistant," Fong Min said with a smile. She looked at Poplar Fruit with a complicated expression. She didn't expect that Poplar Fruit, who looked like he was living off Miss Zheng, would be so favored by Ardal. "Aren't you?" Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. "Yes, I was temporarily transferred to Bali to serve you." Fong Min smiled generously. "It's my honor and opportunity. If I didn't know you at that time, I wouldn't have had the chance to come to the headquarters to learn. This time, I'm directly responsible for you and Mr. Ardal." Chapter 704. Poplar Fruit was pleasantly surprised by Fong Min's arrival. Although he hadn't officially started training, he could guess that he would be very busy in the future. Kiki needed someone to take care of her. Poplar Fruit didn't need to be distracted by someone he knew to take care of her. That was not the only benefit of having an assistant. Renault drove them to Givenchy's clubhouse on the Champs-Élysées and left without saying a word. As Poplar Fruit was confused, Fong Min walked in front of him and smiled. "Poplar Fruit, come with me." She had arrived half a month ago and had been staying in the clubhouse to learn about the training ground and the details. With her leading the way, Poplar Fruit smoothly arrived at the training ground behind the clubhouse. The clubhouse building had 10 floors. The first 5 floors were obviously luxurious places for exhibitions, shopping, and food. The 6th floor was the storage area, and the 7th floor was the studio. The 8th floor was reserved for designers and tailors, although they were not there most of the time. The top 2 floors were used for model training and fitting. In addition to the Bali Fashion Week, Givenchy held 1 or 2 shows in the clubhouse almost every week. After all, the Champs-Élysées received countless tourists from all over the world every day. The atmosphere of the show would stimulate the tourists' desire to buy. As the Bali Fashion Week approached, the training ground on the 2 floors became more lively. When Poplar Fruit followed Fong Min upstairs, he opened the door and saw many tall models walking around inside. Each of them was surrounded by many assistants who were busy touching up their makeup, fanning them, and turning on the lights. Fong Min was the only one here, which seemed a little shabby. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't care. He was still looking left and right excitedly to observe the other models. Fong Min turned her head and comforted him in a low voice. Poplar Fruit, don't worry too much. These models have agencies and are already famous international models. It's normal for them to have many assistants. You've just stepped into this circle. When you become famous, you won't be any worse than them. Poplar Fruit smiled. In fact, he was not interested in stepping into this circle, nor was he competitive. However, he was still a little curious. He asked Fong Min, "You said that those assistants were brought here by themselves? Didn't they say that the organizer would provide a makeup artist? There are almost 100 models. No matter how rich the company is, it's impossible to provide a professional makeup artist for each of them." Fong Min smiled faintly. "It's like this. Usually there are 5 or 6 makeup artists stationed here. The models that the management company doesn't take a fancy to are all done by them. However, as you can see over there, you have to wait in line. If you sweat in the middle of the process, no one will touch up your makeup unless the instructor can't stand it and instructs a makeup artist to cut the queue and touch up your makeup. Besides, these makeup artists aren't the best. Their skills are a little lacking. Furthermore, there are so many people queuing up. The speed is fast and the quality can't keep up. If they want to perform better during this period, they might as well use the people they brought here themselves." Fong Min pointed to the supermodels who were surrounded like little emperors and said, "If they can get the opportunity to appear in the main show, they will definitely make more money in the next year. It's not a big deal to invest a little now. However, Poplar Fruit, you don't have to worry. You are the most special one. Mr. Ardle trusts you very much. No matter what others do, you can wear his clothes and appear on the runway in the main show." Fong Min winked at him slyly and said, "However, don't tell others. Otherwise there will be a lot of rumors." Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. He nodded silently. It wasn't that he was moved. For him, appearing in the main show of the Fashion Week was no different from taking a teacher's class. Poplar Fruit didn't expect Ardle to trust him so much. This made Poplar Fruit feel more pressure on his shoulders. He had to work harder. He couldn't let his friend lose face. "Poplar Fruit, be careful when you talk later." Fong Min saw a bald man coming from afar. She lowered her voice and said to Poplar Fruit, "I'll introduce you to the deputy director later." Poplar Fruit looked around and whispered, "That's not a good idea, is it? There are so many people watching." Poplar Fruit knew that he would be burned to death by jealousy if he blatantly tried to build a relationship with Ardle in front of so many people. "I know it's not a good idea, but he told me before that when you come here, I must take you to him. He will personally guide you," Fong Min said helplessly. "Anyway, you are destined to not be able to keep a low profile. You might as well." She didn't finish the rest of her words. Poplar Fruit knew that she had nothing to lose. Well, it could be called cutting off all means of retreat. "Mr. Jacques, good morning." Fong Min walked up with a smile and greeted the bald man. "Leon is here today. This is Leon. Leon, this is Mr. Jacques, who is also your instructor." "Mr. Jacques, hello." Poplar Fruit's sixth sense was very strong. In an instant, he felt the burning eyes and malicious glances around him. He frowned slightly and pulled Kiki slightly behind him, using his body to block other people's scrutiny. Fangmin spoke in English because she was still not very fluent in the French she had learned. However, Jacques' reply was indeed in perfect French. His sharp eyes turned from Fangmin to Poplar Fruit's face, and he scolded unceremoniously. "You're a big shot, aren't you? Everyone came early. Why are you the only one late? Do you want everyone to wait for you?" Fangmin had a hard time listening, but she still understood words like late. Fangmin was anxious. She was about to go up and defend Poplar Fruit. Because it wasn't Poplar Fruit's fault at all. Today was Poplar Fruit's first time here, and he didn't know what time to gather. If anyone was to blame, it was the driver's fault. Poplar Fruit pulled her back. He was in a good mood. His posture was a little humble, but he was definitely not obsequious. Nodding, Poplar Fruit smiled faintly and said, "Understood, Mr. Jacques. Next time, I'll come earlier." Regardless of whether Jacques was deliberately targeting him or not, there were already so many models present when he arrived. It was obvious that he was too late. When he took the car in the morning, Poplar Fruit found that it actually took less than 20 minutes to walk from the hotel. There was no need for a car to pick him up. Poplar Fruit planned to walk earlier next time. Jacques raised his eyebrows, which made his bald head look funny. He didn't expect Poplar Fruit to give in so easily. He snorted and said, "I hope you'll practice hard. If you don't pass the most basic assessment, even if it's your relationship with Ardil, I won't let you go." Chapter 705. Not knowing why Jacques was so hostile to him, Poplar Fruit chose to tolerate him for the time being. It wasn't that he was afraid, but in Poplar Fruit's life creed, if he didn't have the confidence, he would never put himself in a difficult position. "I will learn seriously, Mr. Jacques," Poplar Fruit said seriously. Jacques couldn't get angry anymore. After all, Poplar Fruit was recommended by Ardil. He could say a few words if he was unhappy, but if he continued to scold him, it would be like slapping Ardil in the face. "Humph," Jacques snorted, waving to a dark-skinned middle-aged woman. "This is Barbara. She will be in charge of your physical training. Go to the innermost field. Don't stay here and disturb other people's progress." Wasn't he going to teach him personally? Poplar Fruit thought Jacques valued him very much. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want Jacques to teach him. This person had a problem with him. If Jacques were to teach him, Poplar Fruit was worried that he wouldn't be able to learn anything. Inside it was good. There would be less attention, and he could have some peace. Poplar Fruit nodded, then bowed slightly to Barbara's physical training teacher, and said with a smile, "Barbara, I'm looking forward to learning from you." Barbara looked like an African, and her hair was braided in rows. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, Poplar Fruit felt that he had guessed wrong. Her accent was very pure, and according to Poplar Fruit's research, she had a scholarly accent. After staying in school for a long time, she had a very scholarly feeling. "I will teach you seriously." Unexpectedly, Barbara didn't have the arrogance of Jacques. She even looked a little scared. "Let's work hard together." Jacques left without looking back. Barbara said goodbye to Poplar Fruit and went to the innermost field for Poplar Fruit to prepare. After Jacques left, the discussion became louder. Their hostile gazes, which were originally concealed, began to shine brightly as they unscrupulously swept their gazes over Poplar Fruit. "Who are you? What a big shot. You don't even look like a model. Yet you want to be a model? Since when did our circle become so vulgar? He seems to be an Asian, right? Was the Asian race from Japan or South Korea? Hehe, Givenchy is really going all out in order to open up the Eastern continent's market. Isn't it like the NBA's Zhonghua Yao and Manchester United's Dong Fangjua? All of them were sucking up to the yellow-skinned. Do you think the yellow monkey will be a model? I think other than Muhong country, the other Eastern countries are all fashion deserts. I've been to Southeast Asia, and the people there don't even wear clothes. I think this man relied on his face to get to where he is today, right? Maybe he's a Frenchman too. Listen to his French. It's perfect. Maybe it's because of his good looks, hehe. Didn't you hear? That's Mr. Ardil's connection. How good can a person who relies on connections be? Look at my daughter. Haha, he actually brought a child to a place like this. What else could he be if he didn't rely on connections? I despise people like him the most. Mr. Ardle is really too stupid. Shoo, be careful not to let others hear you. Let's see how he embarrasses himself. Rumors were everywhere, and criticism was nonstop. Not only the models, but their assistants were also criticizing Poplar Fruit. Their voices were so loud that the entire venue seemed to be echoing. However, they did not dare to cause a conflict because it would not benefit them. Therefore, when they were discussing and slandering Poplar Fruit, they used their own country's language. Some were in Russian, some were in Spanish and Portuguese, which were commonly used in South America. There were also many other small European languages. Poplar Fruit was not omnipotent, but he could still understand most of them. The feeling of not being able to fight back while listening to other people's ridicule was really frustrating. Poplar Fruit was fine with himself, but he really wanted to punch and kick those who insulted his skin color, his country, and even Kiki until they could not take care of themselves. But what was the use of that? Other than letting Givenchy kick him out, other than letting those who were not beaten up to insult him even more, other than smearing the reputation of his country, what else could it solve? No. Poplar Fruit clenched his fists and secretly remembered this. He firmly believed that his performance was the best way to fight back. Kiki and Fangmin were still the best. Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. It was really fortunate that he could not hear their nasty words. However, when he turned his head, he saw that Fangmin's face was a little pale, and she looked very unhappy. He asked curiously, "Fangmin, what's wrong?" Fangmin shook her head and said in a low voice, "They're too much." "Are you talking about Jacques or those models?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's normal. Jacques doesn't know me and thinks that I got in through the back door. Then, of course, they're very hostile to me. One more person means one more hole." "No, you don't know this, Barbara." Fangmin sulked and said unwillingly, "Last year, she was rated as the worst instructor in Givenchy." Poplar Fruit asked in surprise, "There's a worst instructor?" "They were the ones who rated her in private." Fangmin shook her head and said, "I heard that Barbara is the black version of Zhao Kuo. She has a lot of theories, but she can't teach good models." "How did you know?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "How did she know so much gossip?" "Didn't I come half a month early?" Fangmin sighed and said, "You already have a poor foundation. I thought the bald guy would give you special guidance for Mr. Ardle's sake. I didn't expect him to be so ruthless." Fangmin was a talent. She was serious and had a way of doing things. She came half a month early to help Poplar Fruit, and asked about the relationships of the people in the hall. Even if Yang Guo were to find another assistant, she probably wouldn't be able to find such a good one. Poplar Fruit thought differently from Fangmin. He wouldn't let other people's bad comments about Barbara affect his mood. No matter how bad Barbara was, how bad could she be when compared to Givenchy? Besides, Poplar Fruit was a model with no foundation. What was the difference between a perfect instructor and an 80-flawed instructor? In Poplar Fruit's opinion, Barbara was more suitable for him than the others. No matter how good her ability was, Poplar Fruit felt that he could learn more from her because of her sincere attitude. "Didn't you look down on me and Barbara? Then the two of us, the worst combination, will produce the best results for you to see. Don't think too much." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Let's go. Don't let my new instructor wait too long." Chapter 706. The models chosen by Givenchy this year, regardless of whether they could make it to the main show, were all international supermodels with a certain degree of fame in the fashion circle. On the other hand, Yang Guo was a complete newcomer. Not to mention Bali, the capital of fashion. Even if he was thrown into the domestic circle, not many people would know him. However, from that day onwards, nearly 100 supermodels on the 7th and 8th floors of the Givenchy Hall knew about his existence. Although they had no clue about Poplar Fruit's background, it didn't stop them from watching Poplar Fruit like monkeys in a zoo. This feeling accompanied Yang Guo as she passed through several venues and arrived at the innermost runway on the 7th floor. There were 6 big and 4 small runway stages on the 7th floor, all of which could be used for rehearsals and training. It was said that the facilities on the 8th floor were even better. There were 3 large runway stages designed according to the specifications of a real show. Not only could they be used for rehearsals, but they could also be used for small-scale shows on the 8th floor. Needless to say, the models rehearsing and training on the 2nd floor were definitely better than those on the 7th floor. When Poplar Fruit arrived at the runway, Barbara was clearing the stage. Although her voice wasn't loud and she didn't have enough prestige, the models didn't dare resist her. They packed up their things and went to the other runways. The models were a little better. They didn't dare to make any noise to avoid being caught, but their assistants didn't have so many scruples. Many of them walked past Yanghua and looked at her with disgust. They couldn't help but snort. A tall woman, who was standing in front of the tea stage and dressed differently from the others, walked towards Yanghua and looked at him coldly. Yanghua looked at this Latin American woman in confusion and scratched her head. She was really tall. When she stood next to Poplar Fruit, who was 1.9 meters tall, Poplar Fruit didn't think he had any height advantage. Fang Min was more familiar with her than Poplar Fruit. She quickly said, "Hello, Ms. Giselle." Poplar Fruit, "This is Ms. Giselle, the company's instructor." "Alright, there's no need to greet me." Giselle looked at Poplar Fruit with disdain for his messy hairstyle and coldly said, "I'll be watching you." Giselle threw out this sentence without rhyme or reason, then turned and left. Poplar Fruit frowned, which was seen by Fang Min. She said worriedly, "Poplar Fruit, even teacher Giselle has opinions about us. She used to be one of the top models in the world and won many awards. With so many supermodels, I don't know how many people want to get her guidance." Poplar Fruit wasn't as disgusted by Giselle's words as he was by Jacques. He frowned because it was the first time in his life that he saw such a tall woman, and he wasn't used to it. "Don't worry too much about other people's opinions. We will work hard to be ourselves." Poplar Fruit comforted Fang Min. Fang Min looked at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She thought to herself, "How can this guy be so careless? Others are taking advantage of us, but he's still so calm." Poplar Fruit went over to say hello to Barbara. Because the people around them had left, the chairs and tables in front of the runway were empty. Fang Min took Kiki's hand and found a place to sit and watch. Kiki wasn't very familiar with Fang Min. She looked left and right, then slid down from the chair, and wanted to run to her father. "Oh little Kiki." Fang Min quickly hugged Kiki. After thinking for a moment, she remembered Kiki's name and whispered in her ear, "Don't disturb your father. He has to study now." "Why does Papa have to study?" Kiki stopped struggling and asked in confusion. Because there are a lot of powerful uncles and aunts here. Your father has to learn a lot to defeat them." Fang Min thought for a moment and said. When Kiki heard this, she was unhappy. She pouted and said, "My Papa is the most powerful." "Your father may be very powerful in other aspects, but he's not necessarily a model." Fang Min looked over there worriedly and listened carefully to Barbara's words. She said without thinking, "Your father has never been a model. Papa is the most powerful. He's the most powerful." Kiki couldn't take it anymore. She pouted and shouted. Listening to her voice, the little guy was really angry. Fang Min patted her own head and realized that she was really stupid. What was the point of analyzing with a child? Poplar Fruit also noticed this. He excused himself from Barbara and walked over to comfort Kiki. He took out an iPad from his bag and handed it to Fang Min. He smiled and said, "She's a bit active. I'll have to trouble you to take care of her. Kiki, you have to listen to Auntie Fang and sit here quietly. Dad has to work over there." Kiki pouted and said, But Auntie Fang said no. Kiki thinks that Papa is the most powerful." Yes, Dad is the most powerful. Kiki, just wait and see how Dad defeats them one by one." Poplar Fruit laughed. He made a fist and cheered Kiki on. Kiki understood and clenched her fist at her father. Her little face smiled brightly and said, "Papa, you can do it." "Barbara, we can start now," Poplar Fruit said with a smile as he returned to Barbara's side. "Leon, you speak French very well. Are you also from France?" Barbara asked curiously. My ancestral home is South Africa, but I immigrated to France when I was young. No. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said with a smile, I'm Chinese. Then you used to live in France? Barbara said in surprise. Your pronunciation is like a pure Bali. Well, Poplar Fruit had explained this question many times. He had no choice but to recite his explanation again. After chatting for a while and eliminating the unfamiliarity, Barbara asked him, Leon, is your makeup artist here yet? Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, I don't have my own makeup artist. Barbara said worriedly, That's troublesome. She didn't have the courage to let Poplar Fruit cut the line. Poplar Fruit thought for a while and said, Barbara, can we not wear makeup? To tell you the truth, I've never been a model before. I still have a lot to learn from you. And I even have to start from scratch. Barbara was shocked and asked Poplar Fruit nervously, You weren't a model before? No. As you can see, I used to be a translator. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, Even in my home country, I've never been on the runway. He looked at Barbara's worried face and comforted her. Barbara, I'll work hard to learn. I'll have to trouble you a little more. Barbara was worried about his performance this year. However, even if she wasn't optimistic about Poplar Fruit starting from scratch, she still cheered for Poplar Fruit professionally. Okay, you have to work hard. I believe you can do it. Although Poplar Fruit felt that Barbara was cheering for herself more. Chapter 707. Perhaps Jacques had arranged the innermost area for Poplar Fruit because he was worried that Poplar Fruit would affect the others. After all, the Bali Fashion Week was approaching. Even though he was the assistant director, he didn't dare to make fun of his employer's annual event. However, this actually gave Poplar Fruit a lot of convenience. For example, now that everyone was busy and didn't have time to care about Poplar Fruit could quietly hide in a corner with Barbara to practice. Poplar Fruit went to the dressing room behind the runway to change clothes. It wasn't the China-style clothes designed by Ardell, but the old clothes of Givenchy. Speaking of which, the current chief designer of Givenchy, Riccardo Dixi, was definitely not a normal person. Dixie was definitely not a normal person. His design style was very strange. The Dog Head series released in autumn/winter 2011 was the strangest. Even Yonghua felt her scalp go numb when she saw the bottom half of the shirt turned into a group of black dog heads and a bewitching bloody mouth. In the end, he chose to be conservative. He didn't want to scare his daughter, so he chose a set of clothes launched last spring and summer. A white short-sleeve shirt with leather pants and shoes. Perhaps some people would say that it wasn't a set of clothes. Then they would have to look at the long-sleeved t-shirt that Poplar Fruit was wearing. The leopard print sleeves just extended from the edge of the shirt and wrapped around Poplar Fruit's two forearms. Wow. Leon, your body is very suitable for this set of clothes. After Poplar Fruit came out, Barbara was not stingy with her praise. She clapped her hands and said with satisfaction, It was really good. Poplar Fruit's body completely supported the set of clothes. Not only did the leopard print look wild, but the matte leather pants also looked good. It must be known that leather pants looked good on people with thin and long legs. Poplar Fruit's legs were very long and not very strong. When he wore the leather pants didn't wrinkle. Instead, it set off the charm of Poplar Fruit's long legs. Look, my papa is the best. Kiki excitedly pulled Fong Min and said. The little girl understood a few words. She knew that Barbara was praising her father. The little guy was quite vengeful. After a long time, he was still talking about Fong Min's distrust of Poplar Fruit. Of course, Fong Min was also stunned when she saw Poplar Fruit. She and Kiki clapped excitedly at the side, which could be considered as supporting Poplar Fruit. He didn't expect Poplar Fruit's foundation to be so good that he could wear this set. It seemed that he still had hope of getting a good result. Barbara was happy for a while. She took 2 deep breaths, held the large sketchbook in her hand, and said to Poplar Fruit, Leon, please walk on the stage for me to see. I need to know what you need to learn and improve. She was going to walk on the runway now? Poplar Fruit touched his nose and was a little conflicted. He didn't know anything. Wasn't it a bit too much to ask for a final assessment directly? Because he had done his hair, he forced himself not to scratch his head out of habit, but to raise his hand and touch his nose instead. Although he was a little confused, he still had to do as Barbara said. Walking on the runway from the back, Poplar Fruit tried hard to recall the runway videos he had watched during this period, and then imitated turning out from behind the wall. He raised his head and stuck out his chest, walking forward with his hind legs and front legs. There was a very philosophical saying that went, "You have heard a lot of things, but you still can't live your life well." Poplar Fruit felt that he was now watching a lot of videos, but still can't walk these 10 steps well. He could control his gaze, but he couldn't control his expression. He could control his chest, but he couldn't control his head. He could control his steps, but he couldn't control his hands. Poplar Fruit felt that he was walking very stiffly. After a round trip, he returned to the edge of the stage, jumped down gently, and waited for Barbara's comments. Barbara had a headache, a real headache. She remembered that in the book, on a mentor's self-cultivation, that she had read in the Bali Fashion Academy, the first article was, "No matter how bad your student is, you have to find ways to find his own shining point. If he doesn't have confidence, you will never be able to train him to become a supermodel." However, she really couldn't think of how to praise Poplar Fruit. The only shining point, which was that he looked good in the clothes, had been mentioned just now. Only Kiki was still cheerfully clapping for her father. Fong Min, who knew the industry, had a serious expression on her face. She looked at Poplar Fruit, and was so worried that she almost pulled her hair out. "It's okay." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Barbara, you can just tell me directly. I know that I'm not good at anything, but I need your professional comments and guidance." Although Poplar Fruit had said that, Barbara still chose her words carefully and said to Poplar Fruit, "It seems that you really haven't been in the modeling industry." Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "Yes, I'm actually a translator." "Your basic skills are very bad." Barbara gritted her teeth and said, "Your walking posture is wrong. The strides are too long, and the rhythm is very messy." Rhythm? Poplar Fruit was confused. He had just walked the runway without music. He still listened patiently. "You can stick out your chest, but your center of gravity should be slightly tilted forward, and your head is a little too high. Your gaze should be level, not slanted, and you should look below the stage." Poplar Fruit nodded. His eyes were a little unnaturally looking at his toes, and because the lights on the opposite shelf were a little too bright, Poplar Fruit's gaze was a little low when he walked the runway. "Also, your hands are very unnatural. When you move them, it feels like they're separated from your body. Your standing posture is also wrong." Barbara continued. Her hand that wasn't holding the sketchpad waved in front of her body involuntarily. "There are many, many shortcomings. I can't see a real runway." Feeling that she had spoken a little too harshly, Barbara hurriedly added, "Of course, your physical condition is very good. This is your innate advantage. After training the day after tomorrow, you might be able to walk on the runway." This was actually a white lie, and Barbara didn't have any confidence in herself at all. Perhaps if she had 3 years, she would be able to cultivate Poplar Fruit into a good international supermodel. But now, time was too short. Barbara couldn't help but complain about Jacques in her heart. Of course, she also felt a little sad for herself. Being ostracized like this was the most serious thing she had ever experienced since she graduated from the academy. Perhaps she would really be kicked out by Givenchy this year. Giving Poplar Fruit guidance was just her last duty. Or perhaps she still had a trace of unwillingness in her heart. However, Barbara herself didn't believe that there was still hope. She wanted to give Leon, who came from the ancient Oriental country, as much help as she could, and hoped that this boy who was also ostracized could also feel the joy of being a model. That was enough. Chapter 708. You should practice the basic stance first. Barbara brought Poplar Fruit back to the runway, but she didn't let Poplar Fruit do the catwalk again. Instead, she made him stand close to the wall. "Your stance is wrong." "Wrong." Poplar Fruit looked at Barbara in confusion. His stance could be said to be imitating the military posture. With his head up, chest out, Stomach in and legs together, he looked very tall and straight. The best stance for a model should be the heels, the hips, the back, and the back of the head. Barbara explained to him. But your legs are also against the wall. That's not standard. She started from the footsteps. Your heels and knees should be close together. Barbara belonged to the academic school with strong theories. She could only read out the theories in her mind to Poplar Fruit, and then point out the areas where Poplar Fruit didn't do it well. But she was at a loss if she were to talk about some shortcuts or tricks for modeling. It was also for this reason that it was difficult for her to gain the trust of others in the Givenchy model army, which was basically built by famous models for a long time. But Poplar Fruit was an exception. Because Poplar Fruit didn't know anything. So Poplar Fruit could only learn from Barbara. He even thought that Barbara was too amazing. The details of the movements that came out of her mouth were set after set. She could be a teacher in school. Barbara's words were very abstract. For example, chest forward, shoulders back, and pull your shoulders together as much as possible. A series of descriptive preachings. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be confused by her words. But Poplar Fruit was no ordinary person. When this guy was learning Xingyiquan, Bajiquan, and other kung fu, he didn't have a master to teach him step by step like Miao Dao. He found some secret kung fu manuals on the internet, and then pondered and practiced them himself. Those secret manuals were more abstract, but Poplar Fruit still learned real kung fu from them. This experience also cultivated Yang Guo's ability to fill in the gaps in her brain from the dry words. Of course, the training was boring. Kiki, who was below the stage, was already very impatient. Fortunately, Fangmin took out the iPad that Poplar Fruit had prepared for Kiki, and Kiki suddenly became spirited again. She didn't care about Papa anymore. After watching for a long time, she still couldn't understand what he was doing. It was better to watch the Baba Baba that Papa had downloaded on the iPad. Although she couldn't understand French or the subtitles, Kiki still giggled as she watched the video. It had to be said that this cartoon was very interesting. Kiki fell in love with the way the family kept changing their forms to enjoy the fun of life. Later on, Fangmin, who was accompanying Kiki, couldn't help but watch it with Kiki. She couldn't stand doing nothing. At first, Babla didn't feel anything. She just followed the professional ethics that others thought was very silly and naive to guide Poplar Fruit. She also seriously guided Poplar Fruit to imitate the flaws in the details that she said. However, as time passed, Babla suddenly realized that it seemed that the clumsy handsome young man in front of her wasn't as simple as she thought. Poplar Fruit learned very quickly, unlike other models who couldn't understand what she said at all. Poplar Fruit made Babla truly feel the pleasure of teaching. He understood with a little guidance, and many times she didn't even need to bend down to correct his mistakes. Also, as long as she said it once, Poplar Fruit wouldn't make a second mistake, as if he had practiced it countless times. Many times, Babla even began to wonder if Poplar Fruit was pretending to be crazy to deceive her. However, Poplar Fruit's ignorant look before she explained it to him didn't look like a liar at all. Because I practice martial arts, Poplar Fruit explained. My body is more flexible than the average person, and I have good control of my muscles. As long as it's not too difficult, I can do it. When Poplar Fruit said that it was too difficult, he probably meant twisting himself inside out. There was probably no action that Poplar Fruit couldn't do on Earth that humans could do. Bruce Lee. Babla, who looked to be in her 30s or 40s, looked at Poplar Fruit with shining eyes. His martial arts? Babla was probably not born when Bruce Lee was popular in the 60s or 70s. However, the martial arts craze led by Bruce Lee had indeed swept the world, and it hadn't subsided even in the 80s or 90s. Babla's fanaticism wasn't difficult to understand. However, Poplar Fruit didn't dare to compare himself to his idol, the Grandmaster Bruce Lee. He waved his hand and smiled. It's indeed Chinese martial arts, but compared to Bruce Lee is a far cry from him. This was Poplar Fruit being modest. If they really fought, the difference between Poplar Fruit and Bruce Lee wouldn't be too big. Poplar Fruit's martial arts attainments were currently at the Grandmaster level. Poplar Fruit and Bruce Lee were the same. They both learned many martial arts, but Bruce Lee was better than Poplar Fruit in that he had already established a sect, Ji Kyun-do. Poplar Fruit's unimaginable learning ability surprised Babla and gave her a faint glimmer of hope. Perhaps Poplar Fruit could only be trained in a short period of time. Could he still have a chance? Of course, this hope was still very slim. Babla felt that even the best coach in Givenchy wouldn't be able to guarantee that he could train an ordinary person who had never walked in a fashion show to a supermodel, who could go on the world's top fashion shows in less than 10 days. Even if Poplar Fruit was a genius, it wouldn't be possible. However, if this time limit wasn't set aside, Babla felt that she might really be able to train an international supermodel who would shock the industry from scratch. Taking a step back as a professional model coach, what could be more enjoyable than teaching a genius who could understand with just a little bit? Babla felt that she was even more motivated. When she was training Poplar Fruit, she put in extra effort. Then Poplar Fruit was encouraged by her and became even more focused on learning. Lifting the butt is very important. This will enhance the perfect curves of your body. Although you are a man, all models are the same. Pay attention to your feet. Tiptoe, put your weight on your toes. Your thighs, calves, and toes have to be in a straight line. Practice standing first, then walking. Keep your upper body stable. Don't sway left and right. Don't move at all. Babla realized that it was really as Poplar Fruit said. No matter how difficult the movement was, Poplar Fruit could imitate it. For example, a beginner on tiptoe could actually do it like a ballet dancer. Is this guy a robot? Babla exclaimed in disbelief in her heart. However, Poplar Fruit was just that cool. His existence was to break the norm and create any illogical things that humans knew. Chapter 709. When people put their heart and soul into something, time would pass very quickly. Young Gua and Barbara did not notice that in the blink of an eye, it was already noon. Everyone else had gradually stopped, but Young Gua was still practicing the basic steps of a model under the rhythm of Babla's clapping. Your feet are facing outwards, and the spread angle is small. Bend your knees slightly and lean inwards. The angle of your feet is too big. Lean inwards. Barbara was still explaining. On the other side of the stage, there were two models who had been moved to the side after Yang Gua had cleared them out. Because there were too many people, they could only walk on the stage a few times in the morning. Not only them, but the other models who had their rehearsals reduced because of him were full of complaints. Their rehearsals were suspended at noon. The assistant was busy with their makeup and preparing takeout for lunch. The tutor had his own place to eat, so he left them behind early on. The male and female models sat in their chairs and looked at each other. They saw the indignation in each other's eyes. Involuntarily, they stood up at the same time, turned around, and walked to the tea stage where Yang Guo was. What was so good about this Asian? Givenchy had actually given him a runway all to himself. One had to know that even the big models upstairs didn't receive such preferential treatment. They walked to the side of the runway and realized that they were being ignored. Poplar Fruit and Barbara were so focused on their training that they seemed to be in another world. They didn't see what was going on under the stage at all. Kiki and Fangmin covered their mouths and giggled. They were watching Papa Baba. This cartoon is so interesting. Humph. The tall and thin female model looked at Poplar Fruit and said disdainfully, "What do these Asians think this is? A Disney children's amusement park?" Aha, look. The male model with gothic makeup pointed at the stage and said disdainfully. The female model turned her head and looked at him. She couldn't hide her disdain and said sarcastically, "Can anyone walk through the door of Givenchy now? I've never seen such a stupid model." Her voice was a little louder, and Barbara, who was on the stage, heard her. She frowned and glanced at the audience. However, her prestige was too weak. Even the two models, who were not top supermodels, were not afraid of her gaze. They were still talking loudly. Maybe they wanted to talk to Poplar Fruit. "I think this guy is still a beginner, right?" The gothic male model thought of the shame of being driven away and said unwillingly, "His movements are so ugly. Is Givenchy going to push out a model that's worse than a dog's fart just to open up the Eastern market? Trash. His movements are stiff, and his laughter is like crying." The female model snorted disdainfully and said, "I've never seen such a trashy model." I think Asians should get out of the modeling circle. Not only are they ugly, but they are also stealing other people's opportunities. Her words were completely racist. Even if there was a difference in aesthetics between the East and the West, Poplar Fruit was still a handsome guy in the eyes of Westerners. Just look at the comments of the Wanwan couple yesterday. But what right did a woman with an airport runway and high cheekbones have to criticize others? Admittedly, the modeling circle was not a place where looks were important. As long as you had a good body and a strange face, you could appear in top shows. Some designers even favored models with strange looks. However, the most popular models in the media, and the most popular were the good-looking models. Just look at Cristiano Ronaldo's girlfriend, the world-class underwear model Elena Saiz. Sheikh knew, even if on the self-cultivation of a mentor, didn't say that a qualified mentor should know how to protect their students and provide them with timely support when they need help. Barbara wouldn't have remained silent when a student she approved of was being bullied. Hearing the airport model's slander, Babla's tanned face flushed red with anger. But just as she turned to stand up for Poplar Fruit pulled her back. Poplar Fruit smiled faintly and said, "Barbara, forget it." To prevent Barbara from thinking that he was weak and timid, Poplar Fruit said in a low voice, "Only by working hard and surpassing them can we give them the loudest slap in the face." Haha. A trashy mentor and a trashy model, this combination is really a perfect match. The airport runway model shouted, still unsatisfied. Poplar Fruit could not take it anymore. Others could scold him, but he could not let his mentor suffer with him if Barbara was being scolded. Bang bang bang. Poplar Fruit strode forward and walked in front of them like a gust of wind. Originally, leopard prints were a symbol of femininity, but Poplar Fruit's perfectly muscled arms exuded a powerful aura. Poplar Fruit stood on the runway and looked down at them from above. Only when Poplar Fruit walked closer could they feel the height of Poplar Fruit's body, and only when they looked up could they feel the pressure of Poplar Fruit. Montesquieu said, "You should be more virtuous. You should be more honest in your conduct. You should be more polite." Poplar Fruit said coldly, of course in French. "Did you not learn to respect others in your education? Or did you not go to school at all?" At this moment, Poplar Fruit gave them the feeling of a noble lord. His philosophical reprimand was not loud, but it was mixed with supreme power. The two models were as silent as cicadas in winter, and did not dare to make a sound. "Did you come here just to mock other colleagues and even curse the mentors of the company?" Poplar Fruit's tone suddenly became aggressive. "If so, I don't mind telling Ardil, Mr. Giovanni. Mr. Givenchy, please ask your agency why they would send you, a model, to such an important project." The two models were pale and flustered by Poplar Fruit's words. They murmured, not knowing what to say. "Damn it! Why did I get carried away just now? Why did I say such arrogant and childish words?" The airport runway model regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. After all, Givenchy was a colossus, and he wasn't someone that small models like them could shake. In front of Giovanni, even their agency could not protect them. In order to please Giovanni, it was entirely possible that they would be abandoned as pawns. "If you still have a little bit of ambition in your work." Poplar Fruit paused. Looking at their eyes, which had a little bit of hope, he said indifferently, "Then please go back to your place and do your job seriously. Don't meddle in things that you shouldn't care about." You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.